Welcome one and all to episode 84 of the Lookout Sir Warhammer 40,000 podcast. My name is Dan, and it's that bit at the beginning of the show where me and Phil do the introductions, but obviously I still require myself to introduce my good buddy Philip. How's it going, Phil?
Well, hey, it's me. I'm here.
I mean, well, hey is so not of your normal kind of lexicon, as it were, in terms of your, your vocabulary. But I appreciated it. It was nice to see you add that to the mix.
What are you on about, Dan? It's totally our talk. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, way. I suppose actually that would be away as opposed to a way. But anyway, it is episode 84, Phil. It may not seem any more significant to those listening as those that have come before, but we did actually pass a quite lovely milestone via episode 83 going into this episode, which is we have now achieved 100,000 downloads since we begun podcasting. Isn't that quite exciting?
Way. See, pretty appropriate. Yeah. Well done, people, for listening to us.
It has been really fantastic though, the uptake over the last 6 months specifically. The increase in attention and downloads has been incredibly well received. So obviously to all our newer listeners and to those who have been with us since the beginning, thank you for allowing us to achieve 100,000 downloads. Again, for some reason that number feels like a significant milestone because it's quite big and also ends in a number of zeros. But ultimately it hasn't really made a huge amount of difference to mine and Phil's life as a result. I mean, ultimately, we're still doing the same old nonsense we were doing before. But now we can, go to our graves happy that we achieved a mild media milestone. Wouldn't you say so, Phil?
Oh, exactly. It's like those little achievements you get. We get a little virtual badge, basically. So, well done.
That is actually quite frustratingly. That is something that our, podcast providing platform actually has now awarded us, Phil.
Brilliant.
It exists. They do little achievement badges.
I did notice that when I logged in a few weeks back, and we'd achieved almost all of them instantly because it was only something they've just rolled out.
That is true. It's not to say that we're that good that we achieved it instantly, more that either they have very low standards or that they effectively allowed us to roll up all of the achievements based on our 3 years of content production.
Exactly. Backdated.
And it is now also approaching 3 years of content production. I think we started officially in June of 2018. This is the sort of stuff I should actually know, isn't it?
Well, it said on that little chart we were looking at yesterday.
Oh, yeah. If only I'd actually taken the time to remember what that said. Anyway, on the topic of things that we might say in the future, what are we going to be talking about today, Phil?
Well, this week, as of the recording of this episode, it has been Warhammer Fest. And we plan to have an entire episode dedicated to Warhammer Fest. Chances are we'll probably have about half an episode because there wasn't all that much. But, maybe we can ramble on enough to fill out a whole episode.
I feel like you're doing Warhammer Fest a disservice, Phil. But before we get into that, because that is going to be what we attempt to talk about, noting that we are recording on Thursday, the 6th of May, because this is as late as we could push it to be able to produce this thing and put it out on Saturday. So we are aware that there will be a whole heap of new 40k stuff that will be announced on Friday that will be absent from this show. So
yes, and obviously, so there's 40k part 2 on Friday, which will obviously roll into next week. So look forward to that, people. And then
whatever the super surprise is,
mystery surprise on Saturday, which may or may not be 40k. Maybe we'll talk about it anyway.
I mean, what's weird about that is you and I can now speculate what it is, but the listeners will be like, yeah, we already know. So it's like relative wasted effort.
And we speculated last episode, so,
Exactly. But I'll tell you what isn't wasted effort there, Phil. It is, of course, our 5-star review.
Peter!
Oh, hello,
What are
Dad.
you doing in here, son?
Oh, I'm
What
just...
have I told you about wasting your time with these little plastic figurines?
It's not a waste of time, I like it.
How dare you talk back to me, Peter? It's about time you grew up.
I don't want to grow up. Oh, man, maybe there's something on the radio. Yeah, this is nicer.
Peter!
What's What's that?
That's right, it's me, the ghost of a award-winning TV and radio presenter, Jeremy Beadle.
Jeremy Beadle?
Yeah, that's right.
Wow!
Now let me tell you here, Sonny, my dad was always telling me to grow up, and I never did. And look how successful I was. So ignore him, Peter, and keep playing with that little plastic crack. And while you're at it, listen to the Look Out Sir podcast, which right now, it's time for the 5-star review.
Wow, thanks, Jeremy.
Who are you talking to with there, son?
Jeremy Beadle.
What? No!
This week's 5-star review comes from Apple Podcasts of where, Phil?
Is it Great Britain?
Yeah, Great Britain. We do well in the Britons, Phil. That is a thing I say.
It is t-shirt worthy, apparently, according to one listener.
Apparently so. Apparently so. More so than your last show reference about lobsters. Although, on the topic of lobsters, Phil, did you see that there is a Warhammer crab model now?
It's like I manifested it via my own t-shirt idea.
Well, there you go. Although, obviously, you referenced a lobster as opposed to a crab.
Crustaceans are all the same.
They're all part of the same sea critter family. Much like Bearer of the Word, who isn't in any way a member of the sea critter family. I forgot that this isn't Sergeant McGill again, which we made a whole thing about last week and became the thing. We're actually talking about Bearer of the Word and their 5-star review, which literally just reads initially 5-star review. And then obviously 5 stars, as is a prerequisite for, appearing in this segment. Again, I've said that before. Now, Phil, before I get into it, be warned, this is a long one, mate. Quite a lengthy 5-star review.
Bearer of the Word is really bearer of the many words.
That is exactly it. So quite, to the contrary of my usual methodology, I'm going to try and just read it relatively unabridged. And then if it is that I manage to do so, we'll, wax lyrical about how lovely Bearer of the Word has been. So let's see how we get on. So, loving the new weekly format and the wider range of topics you've been covering. And it's true, we have been doing that. Look Out Sir is my go-to 40k podcast because you don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, that is... Anyway, no, I said I wasn't going to get a bridge. Come on now. Stay in the moment. Right. Have a comforting, rambling style and come across as enthusiastic and genuinely good eggs. There we go. Lovely. I particularly recently... Oh, no. Dyslexia has gotten the better of me there. I particularly resonate, not recently, I don't know how that became a thing, with recent, that'll be it, because I was saying the word that was coming after. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I particularly resonate with the recent episodes discussing hobby fatigue, having been a terrible hoarder over the years, with far more models stashed away than I'm ever likely to make, let alone paint, taking into account kids, job, and everyday life. Like Phil, I also went with the tactic of occasionally sneaking it past the better half, but came a cropper when the mounting of plastic crack in the shed was discovered. I am now a reformed-ish hobbyer, having sold off some models, consolidating what's left, and concentrating more on building and painting. Having done so, I find I'm enjoying the hobby far more and diffused marital tensions. Yay! Anyway, thank you for thank you for all your wonderful hours of 40k chat. Long may they continue, James. Crikey. I don't feel like I butchered that too much in various segments, but there are little moments where my dyslexia got the better of me. But obviously, to James and his ability to have, reformed from his unhealthy addiction to plastic crack, well done to you. And obviously, congratulations on maintaining a healthy married status. That is obviously a thing that we all strive towards in our day-to-day lives. Although obviously Phil is still being very blasé about that as he continues to hoard and hide things away from his better half. Wouldn't you say so, Phil?
I collect everything in my arms.
That's it. The great collector that you may be. But Phil, please elaborate and say thank you to Bearer of the Word, otherwise known as James.
James, thank you very much. Bearer of the Word. Do you play word bearers? Ooh, yes. maybe.
I mean, was that a pun? It didn't feel like a pun. You just, I mean,
It's like world bearers, but word bearers. If I've got to explain it to you, it's not funny. Thank you, Dan.
no, but word bearers is a legitimate chapter, mate.
No, that's the point. It's word.
Oh, I
bearers.
see. I thought you were saying,
say
but you
word
said
bearers.
world bearers. Did you say world bearers or word bearers?
I said word bearers. Thank
All
you.
right, okay, right. I'm going to stop interrupting you. Please continue.
Well, thank you, James, very much for your mini life story, an account of how we have reformed your life, made you a better gamer, a better player, a better husband to your lovely wife, no doubt. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you enjoy the show. I'm glad you've taken influence from both of us, the hoarder side of me, the selling stuff off side of Dan, because that's what he's been doing lately. So, a 50-50 split of our kind of mutual ownership over you has worked. Thank you very much.
I didn't realize we had claimed ownership of him in any way, shape, or form.
Well, by listening to us, we impart our essence into them.
Really?
Our souls are theirs. No, their souls are ours. That's how it works.
Is that how it is? A little bit of us is carried around with them, or vice versa?
It's a bit like the old American Indians thinking if they were photographed, their soul would be captured.
Or how this...
In a way, our souls are captured.
That is true. Like how when the Skeksis would eat the pod people or the Galflings, right? By sucking out their essence.
If you say so.
All right, fantastic. Yet another reference lost on you. Have you not seen The Dark Crystal? I would have thought you would have seen The Dark Crystal.
I saw the movie long ago. I've not yet seen the series. So sorry, Dan. I know you
Trial by
liked
Stone.
it. Yeah.
I did like it. It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time because I'm weird. Anyway, that is the 5-star review segment. James, bearer of the word, thank you so much. Obviously, it's really great to hear that you're enjoying the show, and obviously, we appreciate your insights on your own struggles and trepidations with the wondrous world of the hobby. But yeah, it's been really great to hear from you. And if you would like to be like bearer of the word, James, please leave us a 5-star review, and we will at some point inevitably read it out on this fabulous podcast that we do on a weekly basis. And now let's get on with the rest of the show. Transitional noise. Woo! Welcome back, everyone. In this part of the podcast, as advertised, we're going to now be talking about the various updates and or 40k related news that has come out of Warhammer Fest. There you go. That was me trying to put on a bit of a thing. Phil, you like a Warhammer Fest as much as the next person. How has your general impression been of Warhammer Fest via the internet 2021?
Oh, it's been all right. I think each day's varied. Day 1, Age of Sigma, it's pretty good. Not too bad. Not overly amazing either in terms of what we saw, in terms of the quantity of previews, which I think actually set the stage and lowered my expectations slightly for the other days. And then the others have kind of poodled along, and they've been okay. There's been some good stuff in every day, mostly, I would say.
Poodling along, I'm not necessarily too familiar as a turn of phrase, but obviously I'm sure it has origins somewhere.
Like a dawdle.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's more kind of a relatively underwhelming sense of motion in that sense.
It's getting there. It's a casual pace.
A casual pace that the poodle occupies.
Casual pace. Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because in a way, it's kind of indicative of the fact that we are, as a community now, very almost spoiled by Games Workshop. I think, if you were to go back 5-6 years and say to the Warhammer community of, 2014, 2013, that were starved for this kind of content, that they're going to do this sort of activity on a regular basis, I think, that community would definitely be a lot more excited about the prospects of what has happened. But I do feel like we're in this weird position at the moment where Games Workshop have almost, to a certain extent, spoiled us with the consistent content that they're releasing across their community channels. And as a result, they are, in some respects, their own worst enemy when it comes to things like Warhammer Fest, because a lot of stuff, certainly on the first day of 40k, has been in part shown to us leading up to, the Warhammer Fest spectacular. And that definitely, reduced some of the overall impact, I would say, certainly for 40k specifically.
Yeah, Oh, I totally agree with you. Because if all of that Sisters stuff that they had previewed we had never seen before, then the 40k day would have been pretty mind-blowing and would have been like, wow, that is a lot of stuff. But instead it was, oh, it's stuff I've seen before, and then like one or two really cool models that we've not seen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, for the sake of clarity, for those listening along at home who will have already, by the time this come out, undoubtedly seen the content from the second day of Warhammer 40,000 updates, we are recording this on the 6th of May, and as such, we are unable to address whatever it is that they are going to unveil on Friday. So obviously, if you want our full impressions of everything that was unveiled at Warhammer Fest, you'll need to come back in episode 85, where we will undoubtedly cover off those last few elements, assuming they are incredibly noteworthy and exciting, which I would like to still believe they will be. I mean, obviously, people listening to this in the future will know for certain, but I, at this moment in time, feel optimistic still about what that potential Saturday announce could be, especially as well as what could still be happening on Friday with the beast snaggers that I feel like are definitely going to feature on that Friday content. And then who knows what else, right? Not worth speculating, because at this point, as I say, you already know, because this will be coming out at a point where you will. So you don't need us, guessing any longer. But yeah, so yeah, as I say, if you want to get our kind of full impressions on everything, we'll be talking about it again next week. Whether or not we make it into another full-length, episode about that one topic specifically will massively depend on what they unveil. So getting into it right now, for those who want to potentially read along at home, I don't know necessarily why that would be something you'd want to do, but maybe you will. We are going to refer to the Warhammer community posts that accompanied the live streams from Warhammer Fest. So we are going to go through those community posts in descending order, and that is how we are going to structure our feedback and opinions on the various points within that article. So effectively, even though in certain instances in these articles things that were announced last actually appear first, we're just going to go through it the way they appear there, just so as we make sure that we cover most of everything and do the whole thing justice. Right, Phil?
I'm ready and roaring.
Indeed. So even though it technically wasn't part of Warhammer Fest, it was the beginnings of the week, and we got to see yet another of the Beast Snagger models that we will be expecting for the Orcs in the future, and that is a Pain Boss that they have titled, I think he's just called Doc something or other. I don't know if he's got a name, but it's a new Pain Boss model that was unveiled as part of their Monday reveals that they've been doing. This in many ways kind of going further in terms of, explaining or giving a point of reference to that point I was making about us being spoilt and Games Workshop drip feeding out loads of great content on a regular basis. But what do you reckon of this new Pain Boss Mini?
I don't know. I'm on the fence with it. It's kind of cool. It's weirdly big. It's I think the thing that I find a bit odd is that he doesn't really seem to have any eye slits on his helmet. But then maybe that's just me not understanding how those helmets work, or the slits are so small you can't quite see them.
I think, the thing is with Orcs, right, is they're well renowned for, having a psychic presence that exemplifies or rather expands their own native abilities by a sense of belief and will. There's various instances in, documentation and fiction within 40k where Imperial agents, members of the Adeptus Mechanicus, gain access to Orc war machines and discover that there's no logical reason why these things should even function. It's just simply that enough Orcs believe that it should, therefore it does. So in this sense, maybe he just believes he can see.
About that. Yeah, I think that was me. I mean, I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I assumed that was quite either old lore or like kind of internet assumed canon. But it could just well be that they're innately good at technology, even though they don't understand it. As in, they can hit things with hammers, and they're building it, but they're not really like they're actually making it, and they make it work and function, but they don't really understand the reason behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the history of the orc race is always a really interesting one when you start getting into the period of time occupied by the old ones and the war in heaven and all the things that happened with the Catan and all this mad stuff, and how orcs essentially used to be these, specific creatures that were created to deal with a very specific problem of overwhelming and bringing in all these kind of mad kind of brute strength tactics into the whole sequence of events. But yeah, regardless of that side of things, yeah, I think the lore around the orcs has always been really interesting. And in a way, even if it isn't official, I, like the orcs, choose to believe that it is. And then as a result, it is ultimately true.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the models, yeah, it's very different from an orc just because of his size, and I guess partly because he's got these augmetic legs makes him maybe bigger than he would be otherwise.
The thing that confuses me is he already seems out of sequence or out of sync with the orc beast snagger look that they have established. The idea of the beast snaggers is they're more feral orcs, they're more against the ideas of technology, or at least that's what they've somewhat established with the images that they put out already. So the idea that this guy is covered in mechanized arms, legs, heads, backpacks, all this kind of stuff, it kind of feels to me like it already is going against the grain of what they've sort of said about this range of orcs.
Well, yeah, the beast snaggers do have, like, the ones they previewed are like holding rocket launchers and stuff, so they're not totally feral. Like, they do have some technology, but maybe they just use it less. It feels like this model, more than the others, is much more of a plug and play. We want you to take him for any orc army. So it'll be interesting that even though this one is, I assume, for beast snaggers, whether it is an official beast snaggers one, or is just going to be released at the same time, but can be used by any of the orc cultures.
I mean, it's clear that they have tried to make it snaggery because he's covered in some fur. Yeah, well, also he's also got the squigs all over him, right? And they're all kind of...
That's true, but orcs always have squigs and stuff, so...
That is true, that is true.
I wonder what the little orange one is, because that's like a funny-looking squig if it's a squig.
Well, it's got wings, hasn't it? Which is quite confusing. It's got like little strange little membraney wing things coming out behind it.
Maybe we're going to get flying bat squigs.
Oh.
Like the one from Warhammer Underworlds.
That would be incredible. Although, again, we're getting into the wondrous world of speculation here. And as we said, there's no point doing that, Phil, because people already know what we are or aren't getting.
That's true.
But yeah, look, I mean, for me, I like the mini. I think it doesn't necessarily completely fit the orc aesthetic to me. I mean, obviously, there are lots of orky elements to it, but I think it's weird. It's almost like it doesn't quite equate to an orc. Maybe that's because of its posture. Maybe that's because of its size. Maybe that's because of just how much detail is on it. But it's just something about it doesn't quite work.
Because he's more machine than man.
Maybe. Not that an orc would be a man.
I know, it'd be an orc, really.
Yes, it would be an orc, really. You are absolutely right. Anyway, nonetheless, I mean, look, it was a nice way of kicking off the week. It was really surprising, again, going back to the topic of Warhammer Fest, I was surprised they put this out there because we knew they were going to be unveiling stuff every day this week. So I was a bit shocked when they still went, hey, and here's still a model for your Monday. It's like, okay, weird, but fine, I guess.
And it wasn't just one model, it was two, because there was a little grot guy.
Oh, yes, let's not...
On the wheel.
The little Gretchen Grot Snotling, whatever it is, mini, they never seem to distill the same sort of charm as the Nurglings, do they?
Yeah, I think they're much more playful, but I do like this guy. It's very cool. Out of the two minis, I prefer this one for sure. But then I'm collecting a Grot Tank army, so obviously I would want this mini. Is
he going into your Grot Tank selection, is he?
He might be a warlord. He might ride, because he could ride alongside them.
You could just put an extra big wheel under him.
Yeah, or give him a little, I don't know, pirate cap or something.
That would be amazing though, Phil, if you extended out the pegs for his legs and then just put a really massive like monster truck wheel under him. Just like a big old wheel, and it'd be fantastic.
Count as death threat.
That's it. What was wasn't there a weird old superhero type character in DuckTales that rolled around on one wheel?
I did a GIF and sent it to you guys on the chat, but was it like a Gizmo Duck? I think it was.
Oh, something like that. But,
yeah.
Well, there was Darkwing Duck, which was like a spin-off, but then it might have been Gizmo Duck. I always remember he used to have to say "sucker in succotash" or something, didn't it? Oh no, that was one of the cats that used to hang out with people. No, he used to say something really weird that made the suit fly. Anyway, this is us going off topic. I apologize.
It was very much a precursor to Iron Man, where he would, all the bits would fly to him and assemble into a superhero.
That's it. I mean, I'm sure they definitely. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? It's all Disney IP, so I'm sure they're happy. Brilliant. Well, there you go. Look, I mean, that's how it kicked off. And then we went into the Age of Sigmar releases. Now, this isn't an Age of Sigmar podcast, as we have established on a great many occasions. So we're not going to go into an absurd level of detail on the Age of Sigmar side of things. But what I will say is this. They are making it real difficult not to want to play some Age of Sigmar with every one of these releases. I mean, I don't think I've seen a bad Age of Sigmar model in a long old time.
Well, I think it's all down to taste. I think there are some models where I can go, not for me, but it's good. They are like incredible, whether they're your taste or not.
I think early doors with the flamey dwarf guys, I didn't like their big super monster creature. The I forget what it's called, but it's like a big old flaming I don't know, buffalo or something. It's not a buffalo. It's like a dragony drake wyvern thingy. I wasn't super into that. But bar that, I think Age of Sigmar has been pretty much knocking it out of the park.
Oh yeah, for the last 2 years at least, the range has been phenomenal in terms of like the centerpiece models, especially.
Oh yeah,
like old Kragnos that we have here is like just phenomenal.
I mean, Kragnos looks absolutely incredible. I always find it interesting within the setting of Age of Sigmar when they introduce characters that, as far as I'm aware anyway, don't have like an established old world heritage. Now, I'm not entirely sure of the history of Kragnos, but I'm fairly confident there has not been a Kragnos prior to Age of Sigmar.
No, he's completely new. He's meant to like predate sort of like the Age of Sigmar, and he is meant to be like an old god, but he's still from the current Age of Sigmar worlds or realms, I guess, as they go. So he wasn't from the old world at all. He's totally new, but he is meant to be. And what's interesting is he's not a god. He's like a demigod. He actually really reminds me of the old was it Harryhausen movies with like the skeletons and the what was the other one? Jason, was it Jason and the Argonauts?
Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah,
There's Jason and the Argonauts, and then there was the other one where you got Medusa and
Titan, not Titan.
Clash of Titans.
Clash of Titans. That's it.
Oh wait, no. Oh, God, which one was it? It wasn't that. There's one where like there's that weird. Yeah, maybe it's Clash of Titans. Yes, because it's got Pegasus. There's that weird creature that steals the princess. It's like,
yes,
he just, the look and the name of him makes me think of him like he's a stop motion little anime. Kragnos. Yeah, he's just so like sort of retro 70s vibe to me for some reason.
I mean, Kragnos is a absolutely stunning miniature. I think, again, it's just the amount of character these guys are pouring into these sculpts and what they're building. And, when they in this article, they go back and say, hey, look, here's the other stuff we've also unveiled to you over the last few weeks. And you see like the lizard man or whatever they're called these days. What are lizard men called now?
Well, this is a Slatin priest.
Yes.
But their Seraphon is the normal range.
And that Slam priest money, I mean, I remember when I saw that for the first time, I was like, wow.
I used to collect them back in the day. So I had, not this one, but I had one of these Slam priests and they're all metal. So this is like just blowing it out of the park in terms of from where they've come to where they are now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And then, to wrap it all up, we just get this whole new selection of vampire Age of Sigmar-esque monstrosities. So you've got these, weird kind of nightmarish creatures which have the bodies, or rather the lower bodies or legs, made up of gigantic, like batty ghoul creatures, and then the torsos and arms and heads of these vampire lords, which just looks crazy. I know when you and I talked about this before, Phil, you weren't super into these, but I have to applaud the insanity. I just think it's just so mad. It's mad enough to me that it makes sense. But I mean, how are you feeling a few days on into this range?
I mean, they're very beautiful sculpts, but overall, from like a design aesthetic, I still don't think it works very well. And there's a couple of reasons why. I think one of them, like the body of the bat ends at effectively the neck, like where the shoulder is. So if you were going to add a human onto it, you would sort of add just the head. So the fact that you're then extending like a second torso and a head and body on top of it sort of makes a bit odd, because even a centaur sort of it feels like a centaur has a bit more logic to what they've done here, but this is a bat centaur type thing. But it just doesn't feel like it works as well. And I think the other issue with it is the human part just has all the armor, and then the bat part doesn't have any armor at all. And it's so therefore it just looks like two different models stuck together. And it's like, if they had either extended the armor onto the bat, or there was actually no armor or very little armor on the human half, so actually you see the weird transformation between monster and man, or lady in the first case, then actually that would be more horrific and a bit more body horror. Essentially a better sculpt, I think. But that's just me guessing as a couch, but not couch potato, an armchair critic. I mean, I do design, but I don't do 3D sculpting, so I can't really, say what works best. And it's probably one of those things that once you see it in the flesh, in Warhammer World or something, you kind of see the 3D-ness of it, then it might change my tune, which happens quite a lot, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I do take on board your point, though, about having some complementary armor pieces to kind of synergize it, right? It does seem strange to me that this vampire lord wouldn't, if this is their consistent appearance, add some extra armor and look to kind of, decorate that aspect of their body in the same way as they have their, more kind of, human-esque torso and arms and head and so on. But I mean, I love it. I think it is weird. It does, exactly as you've said, Phil, it does look like two models stuck together. I think the female vampire lord is my preferred of the two. I think the gentleman that appears beneath, as he's kind of like clutching at his face, almost like he's sort of gesturing to eat a human heart or something, as he's wielding a sword above his head. That one doesn't quite work as well for me, but again, it's one of those things that I'm still really impressed with it. Rudikar the Beast. This feels like, although obviously it is part of this vampire range, it feels very much like it is intended for, or an expansion to, the Cursed City range of vampires. Do you get that vibe, Phil?
Yeah, well, this one and the next one below, all very fitting. So this is meant to be, was it Radikar? He's like the end boss in Cursed City. So he obviously ties into Cursed City. So it feels a little bit odd that this is like a sort of standalone release from that, and I sort of almost can't believe that that's really the case. And I think there was so today, as of recording, they were talking about the boxed games, and we can chat about it then. But the chat was just all saying, what's happening with Cursed City, because I haven't really talked about it, and we sort of talked about the controversy before. So if it really was meant to be a sort of multi, an expanded upon game like Blackstone Fortress with lots of expansions, and then for whatever reason they decided to not do that, it would make sense that they would go, we're just going to release these sculpts because we've done them, which is why they've just gone, here's Radikar, because this would make total sense that you've completed that game, you've got a couple of expansions in, and then it's like, boom, he's come back and he's now much more of a vampire wolf monster thing.
I find it weird those two little fellas, those little kind of like ghouly goblin creatures that are hanging out with him. I'm not super into those aspects of the model, but I mean,
is it because they're a bit Winnie the Pooh, where they've got armor on their top and they're naked from the waist down?
Why is Winnie the Pooh wearing armor?
Well, Winnie the Pooh just wears a top, doesn't he? He doesn't.
Oh, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. It's because he wears a shirt but no trousers.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like him. I think they're cool. I like the fact that he's like one big model with like two little henchmen guys on the base.
Yeah,
I love it when they do sort of stuff like this.
I don't mind the kind of dynamic of it. It's just those particular attributes. The models aren't, those little guys just don't look very appealing. And the Baladama Mama Volga, first of the Viracos or whatever it's called. I mean, that is spectacular. Riding in on the back of a wolf with another wolf. I mean, that is a beautifully dynamic model. I mean, if there were opportunities to kit bash this into kind of like a space wolf warlord or something, I feel like there's got to be an option there for some very clever sculptors or converters to make this thing work as in some capacity as a addition to a space wolf army. But it is an absolutely stunning mini.
Oh yeah, this one is the highlight of all of them. I think I wouldn't say flawless, because I think her having wolf feet is a bit odd, but I kind of get it in terms of, Radikar's a bit part wolf as well, so it sort of makes sense. But if she was like a human riding wolves, because she's meant to be a bit more of a classic vampire, I would then say it's perfect. But yeah, I think, I love this model. It's really cool. I love the two wolves. You could definitely, if you wanted to do like the two wolves from that Lehman Russ has from Horus Heresy, and you don't want to fancy buy a Horus Heresy model to get them, you could clip her off and green stuff some replacement fur where she once was, and then you got this cool base with two wolves on, and then you could stick your own Space Marine on top potentially if you want to do a Thunderwolf cavalry type conversion.
Oh, that would be incredible. I think it would be really good to potentially look at it as an alternate version of Logan Grimnar on Storm Strider or whatever it's called, the sled, because he's got because he's got those two Thunderwolves with him. So potentially there's an option there to kind of, at least not in a kind of proper competitive setting, but in a funsy kind of way, it could definitely form the basis of a really interesting kind of Logan Grimnar diorama, which would be absolutely awesome. Anyway, that'll do for the Age of Sigmar stuff. I mean, look, it's a pretty impressive lineup of figures, but in terms of, the game system and everything else, definitely looks impressive. But that's not what you guys come to the Lookout Sir 40k podcast for. You come for 40k related things. So day 2, our expectations were riding high. Age of Sigmar, in Phil's opinion, may not have been that impressive, but in my opinion, was actually looking quite strong. So I was excited for what we were going to see on day 2.
Let me just defend myself for a second. So I was thinking we would get probably Age of Sigmar 3. So I was expecting a really big reveal in that respect. And then when I just saw it was a bunch of cool models, all really cool models. Some obviously we've seen before to an extent, like Lord Croak and stuff like that. But that sort of actually lowered my expectations in terms of, maybe we're not going to see some super big stuff on each day. And maybe if there is going to be Age of Sigmar 3, maybe that'll be Saturday instead. So it sort of lowered my expectations, but I actually thought the Age of Sigmar Day was actually really good in terms of the models that we saw. The amount was good. It was healthy. And I was like, if the next day's a similar amount of models, that would be cool.
That would be the expectation. So not going in the order in which they presented it during the actual presentation, we start on the Warhammer community page with Warriors of the High Lord, Moravan Valaha something. The Adeptus Sororitas, High Lord of Terror, known and famed for being something of a great diplomat, has also proven to be a great warrior, or rather a great warrior that has also proven to be a great diplomat. I think that was the way it went. I think the idea is that the other High Lords of Terror were expecting her to, come on to the council and not be much of a force to be reckoned with. But it turns out she's as good at, navigating the political minefield of terror as she is tearing her way through the armies of the Imperium. The mini is based off of the new kind of mecha style sisters that they are working on, the Paragon war suits, I believe they're called.
Yeah.
So she herself is coming into battle wearing a rather blinged out Paragon war suit. But what do we think of this, Phil? Do we like the idea of a High Lord of Terror taking to the battlefield?
Well, I love the model. I'm going to say that straight away. I think it's very cool. As for her being a High Lord, so what's her name? Morven Vow. I think
Yes.
concept-wise, I think is very cool. I think it does open up a few questions, because the whole point of the High Lords of Terror is they're just on terror and they're bureaucrats. And
But
then
we already have a High Lord of Terror that is also a model.
Oh yes, Trajan Valores.
Trajan Valores, yeah. He is technically a High Lord of Terror.
I guess, but he's one of the sort of weird exceptions where he didn't actually want the seat and he didn't actually want to do the job, but was effectively forced to, I think, by Gilliman to actually do it. Yeah, I mean, the question it poses is, are the High Lords of Terror actually functioning in terms of they're on terror, meeting up every week like, Parliament does? But if she's on a crusade for a couple of years, is she really doing the job of a High Lord of Terror? How would that actually work? Or is someone then a proxy for her on the council while she's away? Is she only away for a very brief period of time?
Are you concerning yourself, Phil, with her parliamentary responsibilities? Are you saying that you feel like your vote was wasted?
Well, I don't know. I'm just interested because I've obviously read a lot of the not Siege of Terror books, but the was it the Watchers of the Throne books? And there's a couple of series where they do talk about the High Lords, and obviously, the Minotaurs coming along and there being a coup, and Gilliman replacing a lot of the High Lords with new people. Obviously, I guess she's one of them. So yeah, I like all the sort of politicking, intriguing aspects of it. So yeah, it makes me want to delve into the lore and backgrounds about what she's doing. And I'm sure there'll be plenty for me to read in a book at some point. So maybe they'll explain some of those little nerdy nitpicks that people seem to have about her. But concept wise, and the fact that she's on the battlefield, I think is fantastic. If she was a bit more of because she is so tied to Sisters of Battle, she is clearly going to be their supreme leader. If it was someone more generic that could be taken by any faction of the Imperium, because it's not closely related to like the Astra Militarum or Space Marines, that would have almost been more interesting. But maybe we get more as they go along.
If she's going to occupy a Supreme Commander slot, there's no reason why you can't take her in your Astra Militarum forces.
Well, yes, so they did say she's sort of the level of Gilliman in terms of the buffs, and Gilliman obviously has lots of Imperium affecting auras, obviously some specifically for Ultramarines as well. So it'd be really interesting to see what she gives, and hopefully it'll be a similar thing, because I was like, oh my god, her plus like a couple of units of Paragon war suits is like a perfect ally detachment that you could just stick into any Imperium army.
I mean, what's intriguing to me is the notion that this character is going to potentially be able to go toe-to-toe with, or potentially have, an equal kind of power level to a Primarch such as Gilliman. This is one of the interesting aspects of the Lord of War, or more specifically the Supreme Command units within the game and the place that they occupy, because in the case of the Silent King, I'm totally down for the Silent King being in that, position and being able to be of equal threat to a, Primarch level character. All the other Supreme Commanders outside of the Silent King and Guilliman are obviously going to be Magnus and Mortarion. I can't think of any other specific Supreme Commander models.
Gazgul.
Oh, Gazgul, thank you. Have they made him Supreme? Is he not an HQ? Is he Supreme Command now? I think he's still just an HQ for the minute.
Well, technically, but until when the Codex comes out, he's obviously going to be Supreme.
Yeah, 100%. When that finally happens, he will almost certainly move into that space. But that's the thing that's interesting to me is that, again, this character to me has the same impact as Belisarius Cawl had. Now a very well established and lauded character within the 40k universe, but at the point of his arrival hadn't really earned the spot that they had essentially placed upon him within the lore and literature of the game, or rather the fictional universe that surrounds it. And that's the thing I've got with this character at the moment is, it is not a character that's steeped in any real kind of significant, massive historical lore within the game. And I feel like in a way hasn't sort of earned that position. But, and again, it sounds ridiculous to sort of talk about it in those terms, because obviously it's a completely fictional universe. You can introduce those characters, but it is interesting to me to start introducing what is essentially a human in a mech suit that is going to now be the equivalent of a Guilliman. That starts to get really interesting.
Yeah, I think rules-wise, it'd be interesting to see what her power level is in terms of close combat potential, for example. Could she really go toe-to-toe with Guilliman, or is it a case of if she got to go first, then maybe, like our Kotok games that we used to do? So that would be interesting. If she's more of she can deal some stuff in close combat, but really she's a centerpiece for an army and giving off lots of buffs and auras, because to me that's what a lot of those Supreme Commanders should be, not necessarily just being a beat stick in combat, which is sort of what they are currently. So I like the idea of these kind of almost like medic style characters that are just doing a support role but on a kind of supreme level. What I would like in terms of lore, though, I would love it if, and I don't know if they really teased it, but they sort of said that you're going to see more of her and other characters. So I'd really like her to appear in the Dawn of Fire series, which is their new 40k Horus Heresy equivalent 40k series. Obviously, they've done 2 novels so far. It would be great if she gets tied into that. So you do see these more reoccurring characters in the ongoing official 40k storyline as models that you can then you get to know her more. So you'll just get to, the characters will develop as we get to play games and everything gets to go along. The same with Belisarius Cawl. Obviously, when he first turned up, everyone was like, who's he? No one knows who he is. But now there's been loads of books. There's been obviously lots of background in the codexes and stuff. So he is a bit more of an interesting character than
massively
when he first turned up. And that was like a bit of a weird retcon where they were like, oh, he's been around in the background doing stuff, but we've just never mentioned him ever before. Whereas at least with her, they were like, oh, it's a new character. She's been put in place as a High Lord because people effectively thought she would be a good puppet that they could manipulate, but actually she's turned out to be very strong-willed and determined to do her own thing, which is why she's sort of gone off crusading. I kind of like that as a concept. And obviously they've sort of teased that she's going to somehow be related to the Charadon book 2 as well. So maybe we get to see her initial crusading in that. So and obviously I got the first book, finally finished reading it all, really liked the sort of story. So I'm keen to see how that's going to progress in the second one.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think the other thing that sort of struck me as strange, and I don't know necessarily enough about the sisters' lore off the top of my head, but are they into being blinged out like this as well? That's the only other thing. Is sort of, I don't know whether the whole kind of golden suit of armor, if that goes against the grain of what the sisters tend to do, or are they not too worried about being all kind of pious and kind of minimalistic in terms of decoration and so on?
I mean, you probably got to look at it of she's clearly from the Catholic Church school of thought where, she's no Puritan. This
is her Pope-mobile.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
She is the equivalent of the Pope with guns and a big old spear.
That's it. I mean, that would be pretty amazing, to be fair. No, I mean, miniature-wise, I love it. I think it's really great that we're expanding on the lore and adding in these really interesting characters. My point previously is more about kind of earning that place within the lore. And again, obviously, it's a big universe within 40k, and it's got room for loads of interesting characters. And Belisarius Cawl is exactly the character that I always reference in that sense, because I always remember being super deflated when they announced him, because they had built up him coming into 40k at the time as, you never guess what, everybody, someone from the heresy is returning to 40k for the first time in ages, and you're like, oh, it's going to be a Primarch, it's going to be someone amazing, it's going to be a really incredible character, and they're like, Belisarius Cawl, and you're like, who the, all right. I remember like turning to people and saying, you ever heard of Belisarius Cawl? And people are like, no, mate, it's just a new thing that they're shoehorning in. Like, oh, okay, good. But like, beautiful mini. I mean, in a lot of respects, I think had they not shown us the Paragon war suits prior to this, and we had been seeing all of this for the first time, I think we would have all been absolutely blown away by this reveal. But as it is, it's a more spangly Paragon war suit, and she looks like an incredible addition to a sister's army. And I'm sure she's going to potentially be an incredible addition to any Imperium army. But yeah, I'm interested. I mean, that's all I'm saying is it's one of those weird things where it's like, okay, cool. When I first sort of saw silhouettes of like the character and things when they were showing like the stained glass windows and stuff with like all the different paragons, I thought maybe they might have been doing something like leveling up Greyfax or something. I was like, ooh, because like Belisarius Cawl, Greyfax has earned her place in the lore, but obviously it's just a completely different character. So fair enough.
Yeah. No, it's it was interesting because I remember when they first did the Paragon war suits, they did that stained glass thing as well, and with that there was like a kind of golden one with wings, which was obviously just, I guess, for squad leader, but they kind of made it seem more fancy than it really was. So in a way, when this one came out, I was a bit like, oh, is it just that thing they teased in that other video? I don't think it was. But at the same time, I'm not surprised either, because when I saw the Paragon war suits, I always assumed there'd be a sort of fancy character version of it. Yeah, and I mean it's a cool concept for the Walker. I mean, if you wanted to convert it into an Inquisitor, you could do it so easily. You just stick an eye on it.
Oh, absolutely. But next of all, Phil, it's probably the best model of all Warhammer Fest, right? So you've got some, Sisters of Battle wielding a pretty amazing banner, but no one really cares about that because the star of the show is stood right beside her, and that is the
Agatha Dolan,
that's the
old lady holding a small, humble, like
knoll rod. I think that is what that is.
Oh, maybe.
I think it's a knoll rod. But regardless, easily the best miniature of this entire lineup. I mean, yeah, like myself and Phil, more Phil than me, but definitely, both of us in equal not in equal measure, definitely more Phil. But we both enjoy the mad aspects of the 40k universe, and seeing miniatures like this really, really, resonates with me certainly, and definitely with Phil. So why don't you wax lyrical about why this is potentially the best mini of the whole darn thing?
Well, I mean, I've been chipping away talking about Codex Surf for a while, as in chapter surfs, because I love all the little background elements, love all these little characters, guys carrying books, people carrying ammo, cherubs flying around, servo skulls. I love all of that stuff. So the fact they've done just sort of a really basic human person holding what looks like a book and a staff, I'm like, this is phenomenal. And I'll tell you what, I posted this on Instagram with hashtag Codex Surf because I'm going to make it a thing. I had a crazy number of likes, and I had like 20 odd people just like comment going, oh my God, best mini out of the previews. So I'm not the only one. I think there is a real lust for these kind of menial everyday humans as just models. I mean, they don't even need rules, to be honest. I've always said it, like, I want to convert a bunch up for my Minotaurs and just have them as wound tokens. I've seen other people, like I know Wade Price from Warhammer Community. He's done it himself already. It's kind of beat me to the punch, damn it. But yeah, loads of people do it. And I think the more they kind of lean into that kind of almost like the background of the artwork that you quite often see, especially in like things like those old John Blanche artworks, and like a lot of them even more modern stuff like the artwork from the new Codex Space Marines. There's tons of like cool little guys running around carrying stuff, and it's like just fantastic. So yeah, I think she's amazing. I'm literally going to be buying this for sure. In fact, I almost want two, because I want to convert one with the eye to be for my inquisitorial retinue, and then maybe one I'll do a bit more Space Marine-y for my Minotaurs. Or maybe I'll just do one and have it interchangeable, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I think there's such a beauty to that whole aspect of the lore and the whole kind of supporting infrastructure that makes these, gods of war able to function. And it's a part of the 40k universe that is needing more exploration and is needing more representation on the tabletop. I understand that it clutters gaming boards, and it's not something that, the more competitively minded or more kind of gameplay focused gamers want to see. But that kind of token esque kind of model, such as Azrael's Helmet Bearer or Huron Blackheart's Spell Familiar, these kind of little, flavorsome miniatures that just add an element of intrigue and it's just something a bit more different than just a bunch of souped up space warriors. And I think that's really, for me, one of the more beautiful aspects of 40k is the kind of grim dark aspect of it. So yeah, seeing characters like this come in, and by all accounts she is actually of quite high standing within those kind of serf and menial type positions, but I want to see characters and figures that represent even more kind of lower ends of this kind of thing. I want to see the guy that's going around carrying, like, just carrying the ammunition or polishing someone's shoes or whatever it is as they're walking along. These sorts of elements are, crazy exciting. But, the banner looks really nice as well. I mean, to talk about the Sister of our model stood next to it, the banner looks pretty cool.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, that one was previewed, was it last week, I think?
Yes, it was previewed last week. Yeah.
So we've seen it before, but yeah, the banner itself is gorgeous. I think a lot of people commented on the paint job on her face is not the best. But I think is there a helmeted version of her? I'm not sure. I think
there is a helmeted version, yeah. Which I think looks a bit better. But again, it's always difficult to judge these things when you're not seeing them in reality. Although that being said, this next mini on the scroll down, Ludwig van Sororitas, is, I mean, we don't need to linger on this one, but that non-helmeted or even the helmeted version of this mini, again, one that has been floating around the internet for a while now, probably one of the worst miniatures I've seen in a while. I think, it's just a shame that it ended up in the Sisters of Battle range, because they've been more or less perfect bar this one. It's awful. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just so it's very static mono pose. And I don't know if it's deliberate. It really reminds me of an old metal sculpt, because it has to be like one-dimensional for the casting process, and that's what this feels. And I get that it's probably meant to be like a stoic, heroic pose, but it just doesn't work for me. Again, might be one of those things where you sit in a bit more 3D or a different angle. It looks better, but it just seems super flat and really retro, but not in a good way.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, I don't know who did it, but it's bad. It's a really bad sculpt, and it's a shame, because the Sisters mostly have been really dynamic, really awesome figures. So the fact that this exists in their range is a bit of a shame, but can't win them all. Going down, the last thing that they showed off a bit more Paragon Warsuit stuff, and they showed off a tank that we talked about before. But the last of the kind of models that they show off are the Celestine Sacrosancts, which they had unveiled earlier, but now you're seeing with them different weapon variants, and now they've got power mauls and bolt pistols behind their boogie board. storm shields / combat shields, whatever they are. I mean, looks like a good unit. Looks like something that is probably going to perform quite well on the tabletop, because whenever I see a miniature in power armor with a shield, I immediately assert a certain level of durability, and durability combined with combat prowess is a pretty winning combination in 9th edition right now. So I can easily assert that this unit is going to potentially be a pretty consistent fixture in the more competitive end of 40k for a while. But what do you reckon of these ladies, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I love the mauls as a weapon option, because I thought the halberds just seemed a bit odd, because halberds are more traditionally a two-handed weapon. So mauls look better for sure. The shields, I don't know. I'm a bit on the fence about those. But I kind of like the I don't know. I like the fact they've got a gun attached to them, sort of as a dual combo. That's kind of cool in and of itself. It does make me wonder what's going to happen with the Crusaders, though, because Crusaders were ladies or guys, even maybe, with shields, storm shields, and power swords, and it's like it feels like they're completely redundant now, because these are replacing them. Or is it their classic Games Workshop thing that they've been doing lately? We keep those models. If you want to buy those weird fine cast ones, you still can do. But here's a very similar thing, but better, that's in plastic.
I mean, it's not to suggest that they're not going to at some point re-explore those Inquisition ranges and the Crusaders specifically. So, they did do a plastic sculpt of a Crusader via Blackstone Fortress in that.
They did, yeah.
That Heroes range for Blackstone that you can't now buy for.
I really
it's so annoying, isn't it? It's like, it contains a really, really good AdMech character as well, and you can't get hold of that, and you can't get, it's got the Servitor and the. It was a good box.
I know. I was sort of really gutted I didn't end up getting it in the end. I think there's a conversation to be had about why don't they ever re-release those things? Is it worth getting them if you want to get them for 40k? Because if they're never going to support them again, they're clearly going to go to Legends eventually. So if you want them as great characters, cool. But it feels like if you buy them for 40k, they're going to last maybe one edition and then they're gone. And it seems a bit odd, because they're, those models, all the Rogue Trader minis, it's like, why just don't they sell them? Because people would buy them. Puzzling anyway. But it's odd, because obviously the Crusaders specifically, the only rules for them are in the Sisters of Battle Codex. So they are, even though they were very historically Inquisition units, they're very much Sisters units, because they're part of the Adeptus Ministorum, or the Ecclesiarchy at least. So it's a bit odd. Who knows what's going to happen with those, if they appear in the Codex, or maybe they still will. What I thought, again, it was great to see these the new guys or ladies with maces, and they previewed one model before with halberds. So I'm just a bit like, show us the halberd squad as well, like all together, so we can see all the poses. It's a bit odd that they've shown us one half of a multi-part kit and not the other half.
What do you think of the sergeant model? I can't remember what they call them in Sisters. The sergeant model with the candelabra on the on the back. It's a bit sort of mad, isn't it? With the I know you like a candle on your minis, but it's sort of one of those things where it's a bit.
It's cool. I like the impracticality of things like banners on backpacks and things, so I'm not too averse to it. I mean, it gives them an interesting silhouette. It looks like a super fragile piece that could easily snap if you're not careful. They're a cool model though. Like, I mean, I think they're all pretty good.
I think the fact that they all have these like fire guards over their heads is a bit sort of strange. I suppose people
are gonna stab their thumbs on them for sure.
Oh, 100%. But I suppose it's the difference, right? So like, they've got the fire guards on these ones, but then the rest of the Sisters have, big burning braziers or whatever they're called, the big flamey balls that sort of exist there. And they never have flame guards over them. Obviously, they have to rim. But anyway, interesting unit. I think it's going to definitely do well for itself in the game, which means that we're going to probably get used to seeing it, because, again, it seems to fit a number of criteria. They also went so far as to put one of those minis on the cover of the Codex, which they obviously said was also coming. So we got new cover art for Adeptus Sororitas. So that is all, locks in. Who knows when we're actually going to receive that Codex? There's no real visibility yet on what the release date will be for that, but it's reasonable to assert that it should happen around June, I guess. I don't know. I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah, your guess would be as good as anyone else's. I presume. One of the things that was interesting is people were asking, "Oh, is there any more AdMech previews?" And they basically said, "No, you've seen it all, and it was meant to come out, and obviously hasn't." So I assume that will come out at a similar time or just before this one, and they might even do like a back-to-back, release to just get them out potentially.
Yeah. No, indeed. But yeah, really excited to see what they've added to the sisters in the new Adeptus Sororitas Codex. Really beautiful piece of artwork. I've always been really impressed with the artwork from the 9th edition codexes. This seems to have a number of design cues similar to the ones seen on the Drakari cover, with that, kind of, lone, almost like lower level troop style character occupying the forefront of the image. But yeah, no, it looks good, man. And on the topic of books, one of the last things they talk about in this particular segment, in this particular article, is Warzone Caradon Book 2, The Book of Fire. Are we excited about that, Phil? You've already said as much, but do you want to expand upon Book of Fire?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. Partly because I really enjoyed the story and the setting. It was interesting that they were like, "Oh yes, this series is like a military history books. It's like the first time we've done this sort of thing." And I was like, "Unless you've read any of the Forge World ones, because that's exactly what they all are." But which I'm glad they sort of almost acknowledge that they have been influenced by. It is interesting. Is it just going to be a two-act book, or will there be a third one? Will they make it a bit more ongoing, or will it be just like Vigilus, where it is there's two and you're done? If that is the case, and it ends a bit like Vigilus, where Metallica was under siege, but it's all fine now, and Chaos have lost, or they've just disappeared, or they're still fighting, but it's the main essence of the fight has gone. It'll be a bit disappointing. I always like the books where Chaos need a bit more of a win beyond Cadia. So I hope there's a bit more ongoing ramifications for the storyline. But I have been enjoying the story so far.
Did you notice on the thumbnail of the video, Phil, they show the ending sequence of the actual trailer where you see Be'lakor staring out over the a kind of cityscape, and then you see a number of Imperial Knights in the foreground. Did you notice?
I did notice. Weirdly, I only noticed on the second time round, because initially I was just looking at all the knights going, "Ooh," and then second time round I saw Be'lakor.
Well, it wasn't Be'lakor. It was interesting. It's some of the illustrations of the weapons on the Imperial Knights. Some of them have some silhouetted weapons that aren't necessarily renowned for currently existing.
Well, I was looking at those, and I sort of ended up going, I think that's just meant to be a multi-melter, I think. But yes, I'm not entirely sure. It would be.
It gives the impression that it's some kind of new flamer type weapon for an Imperial Knight.
I mean, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? And we did speculate that in the previous episodes, that knights need, or be cool if they get a new kit. I was kind of, I'm glad I got my guess right that Be'lakor's rules probably will be in the Warzone Charadon stuff. But unfortunately, that means if you're after demons, you're going to wait a long time for your actual codex. What's interesting is in the animation, they also show you the new High Lord of Terror. So I'm assuming her rules won't be in there, unlike Be'lakor's, because she'd obviously be in the Sisters Codex. But obviously, what I suspect is she and Warsuits might have a special detachment type to play Sisters in a particular way, a bit like how you had was it Lilith and the witches in the first book. So I suspect she's going to get something like that, because they teased about the different types of rules or armies of renown that will be in the book.
Yeah, they're definitely going to put extra rules in here for the sisters. I have no doubt that is going to occur. But also the fact that they're obviously including rules for Be'lakor is super interesting.
Yeah,
I think,
and he's getting his own detachment as well, or army of renown, because they say it's going to be the disciples of Be'lakor, so it comprises of demons and space marines.
but I think the thing that's interesting to me most is potential release date for this and the time between this coming out and obviously the Be'lakor model shipping, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there who have, purchased and started painting really beautiful Be'lakors, who want to use them in their 40k armies and are now being essentially made to wait, even though they have, bought the miniature. I would really like to see Games Workshop just bite the bullet and give those guys a PDF, because I feel like it is somewhat appropriate for people to be given a PDF at this point. Or if you want to be really particular about it, just add the data sheet to the app. It feels a little bit of a shame that these guys are going to have to wait till who knows when to start actually using Be'lakor.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I guess when the data sheet does come out in the book, he'll then be in the app.
Yes.
And most of the rules will be for free, but it tends to be the special rules will still be locked, although they probably actually previewed most of those on Warhammer Community, probably not all of them. So you could probably make do that way. I mean, if it comes out in the next few weeks, it's not a big deal. I think they're probably...
Do you think it'll come out in the next few weeks, though? I don't. I think this is going to come later, maybe June, July, maybe even then. But again, I'm speculating. I appreciate, but I just... looking at what's still to come.
It's a bit of an odd one that they almost jumped the gun on the Be'lakor release to not coincide with the book. Again, as you say, because why release a model when the rules don't really fit? Because the old rules, I mean, I think they just go, just use the old rules. Why wouldn't you? But it's like, but you previewed the new rules and they're good and people want them. So yeah, I feel for people, especially in countries where there is no lockdown and they can... play with that model. They might have it painted already, or I think even most, unless you're a commission painter, you're still probably painting him up to do a reasonably good job on him. So I think they have a bit of leeway in that respect. Of most people are still painting him, and even then they might not be able to play with him for a couple of weeks or longer. So I think that they're using that to not do it. But as you say, if it is going to be more than a month, then maybe they do need to release like a PDF, or just put him on the app sort of now, so people can actually start using him. Yeah,
I think he's obviously been an overwhelmingly popular miniature, and I accept that a lot of people will be using him for Age of Sigmar, but I feel like just as many will be using for 40k, if not potentially more, and that's where I feel like it's a bit of a shame that they've just not bit the bullet and given...
I know, but I imagine they're just going to be like, but if we do that, they won't buy the book, because people will buy the book just for him. And now you could say, oh, there's a special Armies of Renown with him in, and people will buy it for that anyway. But I'm sure a lot of people will be buying that book just for Be'lakor. So yeah, I can see maybe that's their logic for not wanting to release him for free.
I mean, I understand. I totally understand. I see both sides of it. I just think it's a bit of a nuisance that you got to wait a long, long time to run a model. Like, my logic is if Games Workshop's selling it, they should be supporting it, whether that's through a paid-for piece of literature in the form of a codex or via some kind of free PDF. I mean, at the end of the day, when Forge World used to write its own 40k rules and it would release a mini, it would give you a PDF on the website where you could use their chapter approved rules, as they were called back then, which were, stamped of approval by the GW rules writing team. But essentially it was a set of, placeholder rules essentially that would get you by. But yeah, that sort of stuff I feel like is something that would be appreciated, I'm sure, by the community, especially those that have, been able to get their hands on this guy. But whatever, I'm just thinking of the little guy, Phil.
Yeah, I know. Well, imagine back in the day when they used to actually do ebooks, they could actually just put them out that way and not have to rely on, I presume, China to print the books and get stuck in the Suez Canal for ages. So, I mean, yeah, their business model is the way that it is. They could change it slightly. They could do their printing in the UK. They could embrace online digital publications a bit more. In which case, I don't think they ever would do that in the respect that they would release an ebook before a physical book comes out. But in this sort of crazy world that they're currently living in, maybe that would actually be more beneficial for them, because then they could actually start getting stuff out. And then if people want the physical version a month or two later, they can still do that and add it to their collection. But the people that want the book can kind of get it in the correct sort of timely fashion that it was originally meant to be released in.
No, yeah, totally understand what you're saying there, pal. So last thing in this particular segment is the Battlezone Mechanicus Caradon. They do an excellent job on the box art of making it look like a densely packed selection of terrain. But when you actually see it spread out across a board, it's not really looking that densely populated. I mean, I love the Sector Mechanicus terrain. I think it is one of the best looking ranges of terrain that GW has, but it is not the most compatible with the gameplay overall. I feel like a lot of weird occurrences happen when you're using this stuff in game, and I think you need a lot of it to really make it feel substantial. And it surprises me that even though they've given you a number of pipes and columns and platforms, that they haven't actually given you any of the walkways. Like, that seems like a massive omission, not to have any of these pieces that allow you to kind of connect these areas to each other and create these really amazing sprawling like networks of walkways and elevated kind of bridges and all that kind of great stuff, which in my opinion is what makes that Mechanicus terrain set one of the best sets that you can use for building beautiful boards. Who knows how much they're going to charge for this? I assume it's not going to be anywhere close to the value as when they first revealed the Mechanicus terrain, which I think was it Shadow War it was called, Phil?
Yes, Shadow War Armageddon was the first release of it, which I think I've still got all of those up in my loft somewhere. One day to be built. All of these pieces, though, were, I believe all of them, were also released as part of Warhammer Conquest magazines. In fact, they had a few of the walkways or gantries as well. Yeah, I think well, firstly, I'm going to say the paint job is actually really cool. I love the
love it.
Turquoisey blue, completely new. We've not really seen that before. It makes it actually look, I don't know, just interesting and different. So I do like it for that aspect. The plasma conduit piping, also, this is the only place you can get it because they discontinued it a while ago. So if you want this particular type of piping, which I believe is version 3 of, I think, 4 versions of piping that they've done, then this is the way to get it. If it had some gantries and walkways in, it would be a must buy for me. And it's like I'm still considering it because it's like the version we saw a few months back, but it was missing the good bits, which were these big columns with the gantries on top. And there's 2 of them in here, which is quite cool. Otherwise it's very similar, but just with a lot less piping. So they've sort of swapped out bits for it. I guess price point is what will make me decide whether I get it or not to add to my big pile of terrain when I decide to one day build a board.
I think without wanting to sound really crazy, and I could be wrong, I think that piping is also available if you get that Imperial Knight terrain piece.
Ooh. I don't think it comes with the piping, but it might have the plasma reactors because I think they're available separately. But the actual plasma piping, I don't think you can get anymore.
Well, in which case, while we are breaking between this and the next bit that we talk about, that we seamlessly transition between, I'll double check and we can
Prove me
we
wrong,
can-
Dan. Prove me wrong.
I don't imagine I will, but I will give it a try. But yeah, okay, cool. So that was day 2. I mean, it's fair to say at this point, and again, it's what we were kind of establishing from the outset, that it was understandable that a lot of people were relatively underwhelmed at this point because, as stated from the outset, we have been quite spoiled up to this point, right? So from a 40k perspective, certainly after what had happened the day before for Age of Sigmar, I felt like the community on the whole was feeling relatively deflated. I mean, not, ungrateful by any stretch of the imagination, but just a bit like, oh, I've sort of seen all that before.
Yeah, I think 80% of what we saw on this day, we've already seen, with the exception of the High Lord of Terror, the best model, Agatha Dolan. A variant of a model we've already seen, which is the Celestine Sacrosancts. Because we hadn't seen the Maul versions, but we had seen the Halberd version, so that's like 1.5. Everything else I think we've seen, like we've seen the war suits before, we've seen the battle tank before, we've seen all the smaller characters and the banner bearer. Obviously the codex cover we haven't seen, but obviously we knew there was a codex coming. And Book of Rust 2, while it's great to get a bit more info about it, we knew that was coming already, so no real surprises there. And old terrain, I mean, that's always a thing, and it's not new terrain either, so that doesn't really feel like a particular new and exciting thing. It's just a bit of a repackage to sell to people that might want it thematically with the book 2 that's coming out. So yeah, basically 2 new models for that entire day of preview. If you were being harsh, that's all there is. So that's why I was like, not a lot to talk about. But the 2 models that we saw that were new were fantastic. Like, they're really good. So
I mean, you say there wasn't a lot to talk about, Phil. We've done about an hour so far, although admittedly that was a bit of Age of Sigmar in there.
Well, we like to ramble. We can stretch this out all evening, can't we?
Exactly. If ever there was a time, though, Phil, for the Games Workshop marketing department to buy some licensed music for their advertising, I felt like Book of Fire definitely required the Johnny Cash Ring of Fire for its trailers. You could even obviously substitute the word ring for book. I fell into a burning book of fire. It doesn't work, does it? No. But anyway, you could have done it. That would have been, beautiful. Don't you think?
It could have worked. Yeah, I actually thought the music that was in it was pretty good. I like that little animation. I thought it was very, very cool.
I can't remember what the music is, but can I guess that it went something like this? Bum, 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 bum.
Quite likely, yeah.
Yeah, always the way. Always the way. On to day 3. So on day 3, Phil, they start telling us, oh, we're going to be talking about Black Library. And typically speaking, although Black Library is absolutely awesome because they create and expand upon the lore that informs Warhammer 40,000, books never quite, to me anyway, feel as exciting as miniatures. So I wasn't coming into this with the highest of expectations. Although you, Phil, you enjoy a bit of the old lore, maybe a little more than myself. Were you eagerly awaiting hearing about all the different books they were going to be talking to us about?
Well, on the previous day, they had mentioned, if you're a 40k fan, tune into the Black Library Day because we've got a couple of models to show you. So that's what piqued my interest a bit more than the books. Obviously, it's great to just know about what's being released. And seeing, things like artwork and for the covers and stuff. So, or just generally being in the loop about what Black Library is getting released. That's always really good. But mostly I was excited about what potential Black Library 40k models they would release. And we had a little chat about it the day before. Annoyingly, we didn't record it because my prediction was bang on. I was like, Gaunt's Ghost.
And would you believe it, Phil? They revealed Gaunt's Ghosts. But what are Gaunt's Ghosts, Phil? I have never heard of them.
Well, if only we had Mr. Joe on the show. He is a huge fan of Gaunt's Ghosts. It's a Dan Abnett series that has been going on for forever, basically. An ongoing series about a commissar and his motley crew. I'm going to assume it's 40k sharp. In the way that he joins them, and they don't particularly like him, but eventually they all grow to love each other. That's my assumption. I've actually never read them. They're on my list
Phil, how controversial! The man who loves the Astra Militarum has never read or listened to an audiobook of Gaunt's Ghosts.
Well, so you hit the nail on the head. The reason why is I actually listen to audiobooks, not reading books. I'm a too slow a reader, and I don't have the patience for it. And they basically only started releasing audiobooks for Gaunt's Ghosts like a year or two ago, and they only started doing the newest releases. And obviously I want to listen to them sequentially, and they've only now started going back and actually doing some of the original ones. So in my, either I've been downloading them or they're in my wish list to buy on Audible. I can't remember yet, but I have got a couple lined up to listen to at some point. But I haven't yet.
I have a confession as well, Phil. I know this isn't going to come as a shocker to anyone. I too have not listened or read the Gaunt's Ghost books. I have no frame of reference. So when I said, what are Gaunt's Ghosts, Phil, I have never heard of them. I mean, I had heard of them, but I have no frame of reference for what it is that everybody loves about them. So maybe in a way, Phil, we need to hang up our 40k podcasting credentials. Maybe we've now exposed ourselves as
what the frauds that we are. Yes,
exactly, because we don't pretend to know everything about every part of 40k all the time.
I mean, I was thinking about this a week or so ago. It's like there is so much like Warhammer content, especially, but even if you look at 40k, because obviously I finally finished reading book 1 of Charadon.
But you said you don't read, Phil. I'm so confused.
Well, they're much more bite-sized. They're military journals, Dan. They're military style. They're not prose. They're easier to read. And there's pictures. Pictures take up most of the space, and maps. And
that's true.
Anyway,
I do like a picture.
There's like that. There's all the White Dwarf articles, plus the White Dwarf rules for things. So I was recently reading the Exorcists chapter index from White Dwarf a couple of months ago. There's literally so much Warhammer content to consume. If you were to do it, you could be doing it 24/7 as a full-time job. If you wanted to read all the stories, all the novels, like there's just too much. So you can't be a master of all. You have to pick and choose your battles in terms of what you're going to consume.
And you chose not to engage with the Gaunt's Ghosts. Neither me as well, right?
Yeah, I've chosen to get into them one day, and then I'm going to blitz them all on audio, on Audible when I can.
There you go. So that's the aspiration. So when that finally happens, Phil, you're going to come to us with your comprehensive thoughts and review of the Gaunt's Ghost series.
If you want to hear it, I'll give it to you. Yeah.
I would love it if you tried listening to it and you hated it.
I mean, I could maybe.
I would absolutely love if you, as it transpires, really wasn't into it, because that would be hilarious. I don't know why that would be hilarious to me, but it just would be.
Possibly. I mean, he's written Eisenhorn and Ravenor, and I do love those books, so I think I'd find it hard not to like this stuff. I mean, I also got one of the things I did preview weirdly is Sabbat World's art book, which I've already got because I think it's just a re-release in a fancier version of the book, but I've already got that and had a flick through that. That was very much like a old Forge World style kind of campaign book with loads of artwork and those sort of side profiles of tanks and vehicles. So I've got some context for the Sabbat Worlds briefly, and I like the setting. I like that Dan Abnett's gone out and kind of created his own niche part of the 40k universe that is ever expanding, with all the books that he tells all seem to tie into this Sabbat Worlds crusade. So I do like that element to what he's doing. So I think I'd like it.
No, I'm sure you would, mate. But irrespective of the books, because I mean, who cares? What's important is these are some darn pretty figures, some beautiful little minis. I think there's a few things we can take away from this lineup of 6 incredible Astra Militarum character models, which they are all characters in their own right, although, potentially they won't appear as such within the rules. But if this is a sign of what could be round the corner for the Astra Militarum range, I think we are potentially looking at a very exciting, update to the Imperial Guard, because these minis are all spectacular. I just think the personality, the poses, the scale, the weapons, the whole, expressions, everything that kind of goes into this, all of these guys are oozing personality. And when you combine this with what we've seen with all of the Catachans characters that they've been doing over the last couple of years, I just think there is so much to be hopeful for when it comes to Astra Militarum and their future. And I would honestly, at this moment in time, really struggle to recommend anyone starting an Astra Militarum army, because I get the feeling that we are not far away from a complete Necron-esque range refresh, because if this is what they are doing with these minis, I mean, I don't necessarily know what the scale comparison is going to be like, but I'm fairly confident that you put these guys up against your Cadians, and those Cadians are going to look ever so diddy by comparison.
Yeah, it's going to be like Primaris to Trueborn or Firstborn. I think our first hint of it was very much Black Zone Fortress doing the Renegade Traitor Guard, because that was the first time we saw sort of humans that were very Cadian-esque, in a bit more what I would call a true scale, less of the heroic proportions. They're a bit stubby, that the old guard models unfortunately are. So yeah, and then as you said, a lot of the Catachan special characters that have been coming out are a bit more like this. This time last year for Black Library, they did another Commissar model. I can't remember her name now, actually, but Severus Rain, I think it was.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So she came out, she's a sort of similar scale, so sort of fantastic model. These are, they're stunning, they're brimming with detail. Also this week we got the Rumor engine, which very much looks like a sort of engineer's backpack. But I think the group thought of the internet is that they're not engineers, they're not orc commandos. They look very much like Renan Rouse, the snipers, the sniper ratlings from Black Zone Fortress. So what I imagine might be on the cards this year is we get 1 or 2 squads of stuff. So ratlings as a model refresh, and then at some point hopefully either a full-blown either Cadian refresh, or more likely Catachan seems to be on the cards based on just the number of special characters that are Catachan based that have been coming out lately. So I imagine the Cadians might stick around for a bit longer. I think these guys would tie in so nicely with Catachans as well, just because they're sort of rugged jungle sort of vibe that they're giving off. I think
it'd be interesting.
Fantastic.
It's interesting to hear that people are speculating around the idea of like rattling style snipers coming back into the range, because obviously those guys do need a bit of a refresh. I mean, controversially, I could imagine that could potentially be something similar to the Rogue Trader kill team expansion, right? Like the idea of like giving us another kind of kill team expansion that has another range, which allows them to expand that, selection of human-esque characters without having to then, support it with codexes and other stuff, because they just go, it's a kill team thing. So it's a rattlings versus, because the other thing that's been super interesting is there's been a load of like elder style scopes. There was a like a melter bomb or something doing the rounds, and I wonder whether or not that's gonna potentially herald the upcoming Craftworld's release, or if it is actually something else that they could be exploring with maybe Exodites, dare I say. I just said it. But who knows, right? I mean, it's interesting to imagine what other kind of game ranges they've got and what that could potentially have within it. But I mean, who knows, right? I mean, I don't know. But the idea of rattling sounds amazing if they started to bring those back. But maybe Guard aren't as far away as we think. I mean, I was relatively adamant that Guard were going to be a ways, but maybe they're coming around the corner.
Yeah, maybe. I'm sort of the mind that they're a long way off, and that they're just going to drip feed us a few bits, a bit like Elder. Like Elder got was it just one new unit last year plus a character?
Yeah, they got the Howling Banshees and Jane Czar. I don't even think that was last year though, Phil. I think that was like
it was when
potentially.
Yeah, because it was when Psychic Awakening came out, so that was, I guess,
yeah.
Oh my god, 2 years. Well, we've lost a year basically to the warp, so that would explain it. But yeah, I imagine it might be just something like that, and at some point in the future, because obviously it feels like Orcs are getting their day in the sun at the moment with their range sort of refresh, but not quite adjacent updates. Yeah, who knows what they'll be doing with all the others that are. But I think it's basically Orcs, Guard, Elder, and to a lesser extent Tyranids. They're all the old ones that probably are most in need of an update.
Yeah, well, again, that rumor mill stuff is always really interesting because it starts to show off some stuff that you can very clearly associate with certain ranges. But yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Who knows when this stuff's coming through and what's coming around the corner. Would I love to see a big Guard release finish off the year? Absolutely. Imperial Guard coming towards the end of the year would absolutely delight me. I think they are desperately in need of it. And if, again, this is any indication of what we're going to see, I mean, I'm all in. These guys look amazing. This might be the first time when this Guard range refresh happens. I may even be interested in buying a Guard army for myself. Guard have always been, well, honestly, mate, for as long as I've played 40k, which is a long time, I have played almost every army at some point. I have collected every army in some capacity. The only army that I haven't collected is the Astra Militarum, noting that I do have some Scions, but I don't see Scions as Astra Militarum. They're like elite shock trooper. I literally took them because in 8th edition.
They're beast snaggers to the main Orcs, aren't they?
They're
somewhat adjacent, slightly separate, but not quite.
Yeah, I got some because in early 8th edition they were super OP, and I was like, well, you got to go with super overpowered because that's super fun.
So basically you're saying once their Astra Militarum Codex comes out and they are the tournament winning meta list, you will be getting them.
It's less so about the tournament winning meta list, it's just about the range. It's just about having a range of really gorgeous miniatures, and also plus also I spend so much time talking to you, and we always defer back to talking about strategies and builds around Guards. So I always sort of have this
been dripping into your brain slowly.
Yeah, it has. I'm just exactly it. And that's the thing. I don't know. It's interesting. Like Guard are always a really interesting force, and the Scions are cool, right? But like you say, it's not real Guard to me. Whereas if we're going to get a range refresh with some beautiful new, really awesome figures that represent the bog standard troopers, that's going to be amazing. Noting that obviously I don't want them to be as highly detailed as these guys, because I don't want to paint loads and loads of models that have all this level of detail, which would start to get quite painful for a Guard army. Right?
I mean, it's interesting actually, because every sort of army that they do now pretty much has a helmeted option, so you don't have to deal with painting faces. Catachan are one army where it's like, how would that work? Like they sort of work being helmetless.
Are you subscribing to the idea that Catachan will be the Guard thing that we get if we get Guard?
It sort of feels like it. If we are, they've got a baseline, like the command squad everyone said is good, but the infantry minis are bad. But just by the fact that we've had so many Catachan characters released over the last 2 years, makes me feel like if that's what they were going to do, that would make sense. As
well, the Catachan would justify the upscale, because Catachan jungle fighters are bulky, right? Like the idea that they are muscle bound, warriors and so on and so forth.
And they are cool, but you've got to basically face the fact that you're going to be painting a lot of skin, which is what is basically the one thing that most people hate painting. So it's interesting because with Scions, it's like they got away with that by having lots of helmets. They're fully kind of clothed. They wear gloves. Like if you don't want to paint a single bit of skin, you don't have to. But you can do helmetless versions if you do want. Whereas with Catachan, it's like you got to paint skin basically. So yeah, but maybe that's just what they've got to lean into because that's what they are. You can't get around that fact if you go and Catachan because that's what they're almost famous for.
Yeah. Well, it's mad, isn't it? Because Catachan are obviously such a popular old regiment from back in the day. But yeah, I mean, bringing it back to Gaunt's Ghost, though, regardless of what the future of Guard looks like and how this all comes together, stunning range of models. Again, I know that not everyone's going to rush out and buy these things, but I feel like a greater majority of people are going to. I think that this is going to inspire a lot of people to evaluate Guard in the future, and I think this is something that it's, again, I don't know anything about these characters from a story perspective. I've not read it. I've not listened to it. I've heard about it. I've heard it's good, but I've not engaged with it myself. But regardless of that, stunning. It's just, you can't look past how cool that is as a unit. It's just gorgeous. So yeah, I love it. And again, talking about kill team potential, this could be an amazing kill team, right? I mean, Lord only knows how you make it work, but if you can. Yeah,
I mean, I guess you could just take them as, you got a guy who's like a sort of sniper. You've got it's weird because everyone else is mostly just las guns and daggers. You've obviously got your commissar, who I think I'd assume you'd be able to take in the sort of HQ or elites expansion to kill team. I'm sure you could make it work. Whether it would be any good is a different matter, though. But
I mean, this is one of those instances where you just won't care because it's just cool.
You sort of do want these to paint them up and be like, I just want to play with these guys alone. I don't want to bother with a whole army. I just want these minis. Like the commissar Gordon himself is just phenomenal. Like I love the sculpt so much.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He's not on a command rock. He's on the command stumpy bit of tree.
Yes, he's on the command route this time around, denoting his position. And I'm assuming that this fella Colm Corbic, again butchering the names, I assume he is like the squad leader because he has both stood on the command route and pointing, but then maybe he's getting a bit of sass from Scout Owen McCall because he has brought an entire tree.
Well, that's true. Yeah, they've brought their own cover.
That's it. There is Games Workshop.
He's -1 to hit because he's behind dense cover.
That's it. Games Workshop yet again has found an excuse to add trees to their miniatures. I mean, this was like us when we were talking about the zombies from Curse City and the fact that they all had trees growing through them. It's like, oh yeah, God, trees again, is it? Ugh. But yeah, I mean, look, without wanting to unnecessarily wax lyrical about this, they're gorgeous and fantastic.
Because I was thinking about, I've got a Krieg army. They don't really fit in with that, and obviously scale-wise, they don't either.
Yeah,
but
scale-wise, if you think they're going to look bad against normal Cadians, Christ, put them up against a Death Korps of Krieg guy, it's going to look absolutely ridiculous.
But I was like, these might work better with my Inquisition units because they are obviously a bit more normal scale because they're all like plastic sculpts. But I was like, these could make really good inquisitorial acolytes. So rather than having like the green on the cloaks, like paint them red or black, so they're a bit more like ceremonial guard. So they look like they're in a bit more high fancy garb rather than camo. And then you've got a bunch of, the weapon loadouts are all probably wrong for what you would want them to be, but that would be a great way to add them in and convert them up slightly, I think, to my army.
Yeah, I think if you did like head swaps with those rogue trader characters, the star fighters or whatever they were called. What was that range called? Do you remember?
Yeah.
They had some helmeted warriors that, like, human scale warriors that look really cool with like the things on, like the idea of kit bash. Not the I think the rogue trader stuff has now stopped being sold, right? So I mean, getting hold of that is probably going to be very hard, but I don't know. There's definitely some things you can do with them to make them super interesting, and definitely very inquisitorial, which is going to be a win. And Games Workshop were quick to reassure us that this is something that will be available for a long time. It's not just going to be a limited release that will sell out and we'll never see again. So that's also very reassuring. Also,
yeah.
Phil, they showed us a bunch of books. Is there anything you want to call out specifically? I'm just going to go ahead and say the most interesting thing to me at this moment in time was the bookmark. I thought they were shilling to the absolute nth degree there. They're like, you like that, Gaunt's Ghost? We've even got the bookmark. It's like, oh, cool, great, yay. I mean, here's the thing with me and books, right? The covers and the artwork all looks beautiful, all sounds really compelling. Until I actually sit down and read it, I just have no frame of reference. There's no series of books here that is being added to that is making me feel really excited. They didn't unveil anything that made me go, oh, I can't wait to hear the conclusion of that story. I'm just kind of not that invested in any of these universes at this moment in time, or any of these narratives. So some of the books I have been following, this is not they. So for me, I was like, whatever. What I will say, one of the only really intriguing things to me was the idea that they've got a Horus Heresy Siege of Terror Warhawk novel, but that they've actually included the artwork of Demon Prince Mortarion on the cover, and they're using obviously the 40k artwork of Mortarion. And I thought that was really interesting to start to see how the world of heresy is now starting to, mutate and merge with the timeline of 40k. So to see 40k Mortarion on a 30k book cover was novel. No pun intended.
That is interesting. Yeah, I was trying to look at it and I didn't quite notice that it was the 40k version of him. Yeah, it looks like there's some weird, it almost looks like an Elder Titan sword in the background or something. I couldn't tell.
No. That sword is his.
It's his scythe,
Reaper,
isn't it? Oh god,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Jeez, that is an artist taking some liberties.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, no, okay, that's cool. I was sort of hoping for the part 3 of the Dawn of Fire series, because I've only just started book 1 and I'm loving it. So I was hoping for a bit of that one, because that is the big 40k version of their sort of Horus Heresy storyline going forward. So I was hoping for a bit of that. I
wanted to see the third book in the Horus Talon of Horus Aaron Densky Bowden stories. I wanted to see that. That is a very, very good story. So I was really hopeful that we would see something to do with that. But say lovey.
Yeah.
How about you?
Ultimately, all pretty good. I think most of those books are probably be giving a miss. The crime series I do want to get into at some point. I'm sure I will delve into it. I'm slowly collecting all the Horus Heresy audio books whenever there's Audible deals, so I will dive into that big time. One day when I maybe hit 50 and I decide I'm going to be a Horus Heresy player and give up 40k, then I'll do it. That's the plan.
That's the time. That's the timeline. You at some point really need to listen to the initial 3 books of the Horus Heresy.
No, I know. I do know. Yeah,
they are honestly superb. Look, I'm with you, Phil. The crime stuff sounds really interesting. Again, only so many hours in the day, right? It's hard to find the time. I got to make myself available for Lord knows how many hours to put this thing together. It's difficult to keep on top of everything,
No.
So nice. I mean, again, books in it. What was interesting? Nothing other than 40k though in the books that they unveiled. No Age of Sigmar, no Necromunda, no nothing. It was all 40k.
No.
Other than obviously Heresy.
Yeah, that's true.
I still kind of consider that 40k. Unless I am entirely mistaken about some of these crime books. No, they're all 40k. Everything 40k, which is cool. And much like this podcast, other than when we randomly start talking about Age of Sigmar. And on the topic of keeping it 40k, I mean, day 4, what can we say about day 4? They trolled us brilliantly with the potential unveiling of a plastic Thunderhawk, one of the most requested plastic miniatures of all time. And then, obviously, you see this beautiful montage of imagery of this incredible plastic Thunderhawk, only to be revealed upon the fact that it is, itty bitty. And then, it reveals that it's part of Aeronautica Imperialis. And apparently Aeronautica Imperialis is now moving on to its 2nd edition or something, Phil?
I don't think it is. I think they've done it before. Every time they release like some new ranges, they just do a new box for it. So I don't think it's necessarily 2nd edition in terms of like revised rules. It feels a bit more like how they do Warhammer Underworlds, a new box every year. So they might tweak the rules slightly, but ultimately it's all sort of compatible and works. So I assume that's what it is. It's more just a bundle deal to get the 2 new races, which are the Eldar and the Space Marines.
Aeronautica Imperialis, I still don't care. I tried playing it. I thought it was really unnecessarily complicated. I felt like the whole kind of weirdness of using the bases to denote your speed and your altitude and all that kind of stuff just didn't really work for me. And don't get me wrong, it's cool that they've added some Aeldari flyers. I'm sort of underwhelmed that they decided to go ahead with the Nightwing because and the other, I think it's I can't remember which of the other Elder flyers is in it. There's the Nightwing and maybe the Phantom or something. I think that is. Regardless, it's one of those things where the Forge World flyers are starting to show their age. So it's weird that they're kind of including those rather than like Crimson Hunters and flyers that actually have some really nice kind of silhouettes and some really cool, more modern miniatures. The marine stuff looks nice, that the range of marine stuff they've added to it looks fine with the Zeppelins and the not Zeppelins, what are they called now? Are they Zeppelins? Xiphons, sorry. What's a Zeppelin?
I think it's something you made up.
No, I think there is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The Xiphons and the all the stuff that's in there is quite cool, but I just don't care. I tried playing it when it first came out. I thought it was utterly terrible. I can't put. I was trying to be nice about it, but it wasn't for me. I've never enjoyed these style of games. I never got on with Battlefleet Gothic. I never got on with X-Wing, and I didn't get on with Aeronautica Imperialis. Phil, you got any thoughts or feelings on it, or are you much the same as me and don't care?
Sort of. It feels amazingly well supported for a game that is probably the least played out of everything.
We assume.
I mean, we assume, but I think it is probably the least played out of every kind of Games Workshop system there is. I think Underworlds is super popular. Blood Bowl, super popular. This is the one game where I don't know anyone beyond Richard that bought the initial box set that actually plays it and constantly buys it. I'm sure there are people that do. I love the concept of it because it's sort of like X-Wing but 40k, brilliant. And when they were talking about that it's very mission based, so obviously X-Wing you're just flying around in space shooting at each other. I like with this you've got troop transports, you've got to drop stuff off, you've got to bomb facilities, and it feels like there's a lot more interesting depth to it. But yeah, it's nothing I'm gonna ever get into it. I don't know if they're just supporting it because it is them slowly increasing Titanic scale range for the one day when they're going to do epic. Maybe, I don't know if that's what it is. Who knows? I think the models are gorgeous. I love the fact that they are supporting it and they are getting more races added in, so that kind of the game will be more interesting for sure. But yeah, it's not for me in terms of actually playing it.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I've got boxes of Adeptus Titanicus in my pile of shame still at the minute, and I refuse to get rid of them, even though I'm selling off a lot of stuff, because I remain hopeful that one day I will play Adeptus Titanicus, because I've only ever heard amazing things about it.
Same.
And that's from people that I really, trust the opinions of. I've not had the same experience with Aeronautica. No one is singing its praises, and no one is falling over themselves to play it. There's a number of like gaming groups I'm part of on like Facebook and whatnot, and those guys are still raving about getting together and playing Adeptus Titanicus. And I know they tried Aeronautica and they're just not bothered about it.
Maybe we need some 5-star reviews from fans of Aeronautica.
Why? Because we just slagged it off for the
No,
last
I mean,
10 minutes.
if there are people out there who like it, please let us know. Let us know what you like about it. I'm genuinely interested.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't need to be a 5-star review. Just tell us. Please reach out to us.
Troll
Explain.
us. Troll Dan with a 5-star review all about Imperial Aeronautica, because he's going to have to read it out.
It's a Aeronautica Imperialis
Yes,
film.
no, I know. I was reading it backwards as I scrolled up the page on the box.
You can't even remember its name. Oh, man. Anyway, well, that pretty much brings us up to where we're at with the Warhammer Fest at this point. I mean, obviously, there's still a couple more days ahead of us. Maybe, just maybe, Phil, following this segment, you're going to get us talking about the Friday stuff for 40k, because we decided to randomly record really quickly before I edited it all together and chucked it on the internet. I doubt that's going to happen, but let's not, completely disregard that as a possibility. But for now, unless, Phil, you have... In fact, actually, it makes logical sense that we have a kind of final thoughts on the topic. Phil, Warhammer Fest Digital, what do you reckon?
It was good. It was all right. Slow and steady wins the race. Obviously, so far, no massive reveals, nothing unsurprising. I sort of feel like Friday will just be orcs and just orcs, because Tuesday was pretty much just sisters. So if it's all the beast snagger stuff, that'll be more interesting to see, because we haven't seen much of it, but we have seen some stuff. And if that's all the 40k stuff, it'll be, that'll be okay. I wasn't necessarily expecting Primarchs or, other stuff, but
I was expecting Black Templars, Phil. I felt like that was going to happen.
Maybe. I think, there is still a whole year to go. Like the Christmas release will, if it is, I still have fingers crossed for Emperor's Children and Fulgrim to come out at some point. If that was to happen, it would be Christmas time. So we won't see it now, because they've got another, 8 months or whatever of Warhammer Community to still give us. So they're not going to splurge their load right away, are they, on and give us everything. If Horus Heresy is getting plastics, that may happen in November, because that's when they do the specialist game stuff. So they probably won't even tease it, this weekend. I'm sort of almost thinking if Age of Sigmar 3 is happening, that will be the big reveal on Saturday, and all we see is Beast Snaggers on Friday, which not underwhelming, but it's no big surprises. And I think everything we've seen is good and nice, but we've seen a lot of it already, or could expect to see it, because obviously we've seen Sisters and Orcs already. I will say some of the Necromunda stuff with the not Caldor, it's Dilac is really nice, and got some. One of the models I really want to get to convert up to some kind of astropath, the one with the big hood on that's holding a snake. If I take the snake off, he looks suitable. They made a lot of a song and a dance out of the weird floating alien brain and a robot of ancient technology, didn't they? Yeah, I'm tempted to get that and then put on a giant skull. From the Adeptus Mechanicus, you've got that little servo skull spider thing. It's like, put that skull on it instead. Totally makes a cool bit of 40k like artwork come to life. So it's very alien-esque. Obviously, it's meant to be, so it never feels very 40k when they do those kind of things. I need to catch up on this Necromunda lore, because I'm getting completely perplexed of where these guys are getting this stuff from. It's like this is really like advanced stuff, and it's just everywhere in this underhive. It's like, okay, all right, fine. But I guess that just speaks to the influence that these houses have and how all that works. But again, I need to update myself on how that is functioning. But yeah, look, from my side of things, Warhammer Fest Online, is it as good as getting together in the Rico Arena, hanging out with your buddies, seeing miniatures firsthand, chatting to the guys at GW and getting all the impressions there, in real time? No, of course not. I mean, that is a experience that I'm sure we're all, those of us who are able to anyway, keen to return to as soon as we're safely able to. And
hopefully from 2022 onwards, we're going to start to return to those kind of events, and I can't wait. I think, Warhammer Fest has always been something that we have attended as a group of friends. I've really loved going to Warhammer Fest. I definitely didn't, by the end, enjoy playing in tournaments of Warhammer Fest, because I felt like the facilities were always a lot less appropriate for that kind of experience. Certainly when you consider the Warhammer World is just a really fantastic venue, as long as they don't pack it out with too many people. But yeah, bar the whole having gone there playing in tournaments, last time we just went to enjoy the show, and it was fantastic. And, I'm really keen to return and do it again. But, does this compensate? Does this offer something of equivalent value? I mean, yeah, sure, I get to see all the new cool stuff that's happening. You get to share in all these different moments. There's lots of conversation around the hobby. There's lots of chatter occurring as these reveals are happening. And it's been a really nice thing to just literally, I'm working from home at the moment, so downing tools at, 6 o'clock on the dot to turn Twitch on and just, absorb some 40k content has been really fun and rewarding for me. So, yeah, I mean, look, I've not hated it, but I can't wait to, go back to Coventry.
Well,
and I can't say that about too many recent things, but yeah.
I think the actual live streams were really well done. They're very tight now. There's no faffing around with really long breaks. They're really good at presenting it. They're sort of bashing them out super quickly. Like they were like 45 minutes, most of them, not even an hour. So yeah, would we like to see more content? Of course. Would we like to see more big surprises and reveals? Of course, but that's not always going to happen. But I think what they did show us was really solid. And as you said, I've enjoyed just the aspect of the live streams, and I sort of hope they even maintain that even when there is proper Warhammer Fests on, because I think for people around the world, you would normally just, check the website out a few times a day, and the feed would update with the reveals as they were sort of previewed at certain seminars. But I think doing it via the live stream is a great adjacent thing to bolt on to the people that can't attend. So I think that would be fantastic. Obviously, there's stuff that you miss out from like getting to chat to people and stuff like that.
I mean, I would
up close and things.
I would love to see them indoctrinating these live stream elements into their presentations at these conventions, events, and Warhammer Fest. I'd love to see them do the presentations, but actually do it with, Adam and Eddie sat, in front of a kind of makeshift studio space where it's like the two of them stood, doing almost like a seminar or a panel, and then just literally being like, cool, we're going to go through it. And it's the same production. Because I will tell you this, the way that they did those presentations at the last Warhammer Fest that we went to was so much less well produced. It was very like, the way the presentation flowed and it just wasn't quite this. And they've gone through the ringer, right? They've had to refine and change and adapt over the last year. But I think it would be foolish for them to disregard what they've learned and not apply it to what they're doing going forward. So, I think there's a lot of really great things that will be taken away from this. I loved it. I think it's great. I just think, again, was 40k day on the Tuesday a bit underwhelming? Yeah, maybe. But then Gaunt's Ghost made up for that. And who knows what I'm going to see tomorrow, and who knows what's going to come on Saturday. When this is all said and done, might be an absolutely incredible event that just completely, goes beyond my wildest expectations. But, still 2 days to go. We'll see how it happens. But that is the end of that. So we're going to move on now to the end of the show. Transitional noise. Woo! And that's it, everybody. The end of the show. Although you know better than that. It's not the end of the show. It's that bit of the show where we answer your comments and questions. And shock horror, we don't know quite what we did this time. But we got actually a real lot of questions, didn't we, Phil?
I know, almost too many, but that's not to say you guys should stop. We do like it when you comment. We like the feedback.
Our aspiration is to now be a bit more proactive in responding to those comments on their place of origin, should it be that we're not able to address everything, noting that we will probably address your questions, or rather comment or respond to your questions as they appear on Instagram or Facebook, but then also still respond to them here on the podcast. But just to be safe, we'll start doing that as a way of kind of making up for the fact that we might not answer everybody, assuming that we have this level of engagement for all things going
I mean,
forwards.
normally I try and reply to a lot of them, especially the ones that haven't gotten read out on the show. So quite often the ones that don't get a reply on Instagram, for example, is because we're talking about you on the show.
Yeah. But in this instance, at the point of recording, I've already gone into Facebook and responded to every one of the comments. So I don't want to give the impression that we're not going to answer any of those Facebook questions, although maybe we will lean into Instagram a bit more on this occasion because of the fact that I went back to people on Facebook. But we would also like to respond to some Facebook questions as well. We're just trying our best, everybody. Don't hate us. Please, give us a chance. Anyway, Phil, we're just going to crack on with community questions, mate, because we got so many of them. Let's begin. How many are we going to cap it at? Are we going to do 10? 10 all in? I mean, 10 already feels like a lot. Should we say 6?
Well, let's just keep going until we're bored and want to talk about something else.
Well, I'm just conscious of the sort of the timestamps for this thing. I kind of like to try and keep this thing down to like 40 minutes. So
No, fair enough.
Let's see how many we can do between now and 40 minutes time.
Exactly. Let's go. I'm going to start off with Cantor Blue. He's an old classic. He likes to join us. Controversially, he said meh, or meh, maybe a long meh, a sighing meh. Sisters were gorgeous for sure, but the stream was rubbish. One new model is pants. Although I was quite interested to see Chaos Space Marines in the new campaign book artwork, which they were actually. Yeah.
Were they interested in the campaign artwork because of the fact that it could have unveiled a new Imperial Knight weapon?
No, I think it's because he's got Iron Warriors and is desperate to get 2 wound Chaos Space Marines.
It's true. Cantor Blue's battle with the lack of 2 wound Space Marines or Chaos Space Marines is real.
He's going to be waiting a while longer, I think, because I don't think they're going to address it there.
I would assume as much as well, but nonetheless, I mean, yeah, obviously, the Book of Fire is cool to see, and it's cool to see that they're going to expand on Be'lakor and the Forces of Chaos, which definitely needs some, love and attention at this moment in time. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about that. Don't necessarily share your perspective on the streams though, Cantor Blue. I don't want to necessarily be unreasonable and just disagree with you for the sake of disagreeing with you. As me and Phil said as we were wrapping up the section, I actually quite like the way that they've come together and started refining the delivery of these. I think they're much less labored and much less tedious than they've ever been. I think they've definitely found their voice in that space. So,
well, I think
I think they're doing well.
I think to not back Cantor Blue's corner, but to give his perspective for the 40k day in particular.
Oh yes,
most of the models we'd already seen. Now, if they had not previewed them before and we had seen them all for new on that day, then that would have been much more of a mind-blowing kind of day, night of reveals. I can see that point of view when most of the sister stuff we've already seen. So I
agreed
at that point of view.
But from a production standpoint, I think the trailers they create, the production they put together, the live stream they do are always amazing. Like, I think, like, even the Plastic Thunderhawk video where, they did all those beautiful sweeping images and then Nick just picks up one and goes, wee, and all the rest of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's a lot of character in what they do. And I think they really put a lot of work and effort. And it's immediately obvious that these people care about what they're doing. And I think at the end of the day, all they're trying to do is entertain us and supply us with news and information. And I think they do it in a really passionate and really fun way. So, yeah, for me, I think those live streams have been bad in the past, but as they are today, I think they're very good. And if that makes me a GW apologist shill, so be it. That's what I am on this occasion.
So moving on, we've got the last wall miniatures. He says, really digging the new Sisters of Battle tank. Still curious why Games Workshop loves the baby carrier style for every new war suit that comes out. Obviously, it's because that's all they know. Because if you think about the Dread Knight for Grey Knights.
Yeah. What other one? I suppose they're talking about they're talking about the Invictus warsuit. That's kind of got the baby carrier vibe, right?
Yeah, that's probably the closest one to it as well. And obviously, you've got the other Paragon warsuits as well as the special character in a Paragon warsuit. So I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, why reinvent the wheel? You've got it once, you don't need to do it again. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, a High Lord of Terror in a jumbo-sized Sentinel would look a bit rubbish.
Yeah. And I think the thing is it sort of makes sense within the world as is. There are, a lot of work on augmenting human potential by using like these exoskeletons and stuff. So I've seen like Vice documentaries where, they're using these devices to augment human potential and all that kind of stuff. Though that kind of stuff is very much current in the fact that there's sort of, research and work being done on that right now. So seeing that represented in 40K is fine, but also as well it expands on the idea of the Dread Knight, right? Because prior to these guys, the Dread Knight really was the only one that really rocked the baby carrier motif, because even the Invictus warsuit, it was more like a dude in a cockpit riding around in a walker, similar to the War Walkers for the Elder. So yeah, but I still find it really weird that their actual legs are inside the thing. That still gets me. I don't quite. Oh, Gazcol ended up being a bit baby Walker style as well, didn't he? New Gazcol's got a bit of that going on. He's got that same kind of external and exoskeleton type vibe. But the fact that their legs are still inside the legs of the walkers of the sisters. We talked about it when we first saw him. It's a bit of a weird element, but yeah, I don't hate the aesthetic. I don't know. Are you keen on it, Phil? I mean, I think they look pretty cool.
I think so. Yeah, I sort of want to see a couple of the models in person, sort of get my head around how it does mechanically operate, I guess. But I think concept-wise, it's a visual cue that we've seen before from the Grey Knights, at least. So stylistically, it makes sense that the Imperium would recycle certain things, similar STCs, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's like a middle ground between that and an armature, I guess. Do I want to see Guard with it? In a way, I do, but in a way, I don't, because I'd hate every human army to be just rocking these exoskeletons. I think keeping it to like Grey Knights and Sisters kind of makes it a bit special for them. That's sort of what you want, really.
I think that's the thing. Forces that are heavily associated with aspects of the Inquisition are totally fine by me. The Witch Hunters, the Demon Hunters, the Xenos Hunters, whatever they may be. Having that in there is fine by me. But yeah, when you start giving it to Guard, then I feel like that's a bit of a mistake. I think Guard already have Sentinels, and they already have, the idea of the Guard aesthetic is that it's just lots and lots of bodies. And I think that's how we want that.
You got the Pentant engine as well. That's very similar.
Oh yeah, there you go.
But that's like a proper classic sort of baby walker, predating even the Dread Knight.
Are you talking classic in the sense that they're giving the poor baby electrotherapy? Is that what it is? Like like the Wizard of Oz?
Yes, yeah.
Slide her down to a table, just strap some lightning bolts to her head, and then off we go. Pennant engine.
Brilliant.
That's really what's going on in while Dorothy's living out her dreams in the land of Oz. She's actually, been sent out into
murdering
battle.
people with giant buzzsaws and stuff. Yeah.
There's no place like home. Anyway, sorry, I don't know where that came from. So yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I suppose it's the same. Was there any? I can't remember. I got wrapped up in the baby stroller type thing. Is there any other part of that question we need to address?
No, unless you want to talk about the Sister Battle Tank, but we've covered.
Oh yeah, the Sister Battle Tank. You didn't like it. I didn't mind it. It seems fine.
I'm sure it'll grow on me.
I'm sure it will. I think it's funny. I think a lot of people early doors were very frustrated because they were like, "Oh, we've already got tanks. Why do we need another one?" I was like, "I mean, come on, like what? That's crazy." Oh, this existing tank won't be as good now because this exists. It's like, well, you don't know that. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I think it's going to be good. I think the fact that you can load it up to the 9s with heavy bolters and autocannons is going to make it absurdly good. I think that's going to be a fantastic addition. Anyway, next question, Phil.
Next one, we've got Folkstorm. He says, well, obviously, I'm going to get my hands on that saucy minx. I mean, who can stand such a shriveled old face? And her gait doesn't betray her age the least. Doesn't hurt that they've thrown in some nun with a big banner in her box. Obviously, talking about my favourite mini.
Of course. I mean, I like the fact that Toke is talking about her gait. I was like, my God, there you go. It's not often people refer to a human stature by that terminology, but, that is a thing all the same. I mean, Phil, you've already established that this is also your favourite miniature, so why don't you elaborate on Toke's point and take that question for us?
Well, he's just spot on. It's perfect model. It's like the counterpoint to everything else. It's like the mundane and the normal. It's like it's something we don't see that often in 40k. So, and I think there's either lots of conversion potentials or just use for it. So I hope lots of people go and buy it, and I hope people post it on Instagram, hashtag Codex Surf, and one day we will get much more of these menial staff appearing on the battlefields.
What would be great as well is if she's absolutely boss in game, like an incredible value mini that really has to be taken.
Well, it sounds like it's got the ability that was very similar to the banner Ancient from Vigilus for the Marines. So it's like you plant your banner, you then can't move, but it gives a big cool buff to your units around it. And in fact, I still think there's a banner that does that for Space Marines, but maybe it's a relic one.
But what does the priest bring to the table? I mean, that's what the banner does. What's the priest doing?
Oh, what she's doing she's just carrying it, isn't she? Oh no, sorry, no, I think it was. Well, I don't know. When I read it, I thought they were talking about the little one and her tiny banner, but it would make more sense.
That's not a banner, mate. That's a null rod, right? Like we've established this.
Did they say it was a null rod?
Well, it looks like a null rod. If you look at what a null rod looks like on a Sisters of Battle Canon S, it looks exactly like that. Although, admittedly, the null rod is slightly smaller, but it has all the same iconography as a null rod.
Oh, okay.
Same shape and everything. So I think that's what it is. But yeah, obviously the banner lady is going to do all the banner stuff. She'll just hang out going, yeah, like that.
She might be like Makari and be like 2 up in unsaved.
Oh, mate. That absolutely has to be the case. Like, I feel like even though those books are probably written, they're probably, currently stuck in the Suez Canal and all that sort of stuff. The point is even though that stuff exists, we need to campaign as a community to make her absolutely hench. Like maybe she needs like one of those old Lamartes rules that like when she takes like one wound, she hulks out and becomes crazy. That would be amazing. Like all of a sudden, all her stats change to 10s, and then she goes incredibly ham. That would be cool. Anyway, there you go. Thank you, Toke. Obviously, another consistent contributor. We don't want to make you feel like you've been replaced by Cantor Blue in any way, mate. Obviously, we're still number one in our hearts.
Of course. I'll try and do some new people that we haven't really shouted out before, because obviously we do have a bunch of more commenters. We've got David Wimpenny. Winpenny.
Winpenny, that'll do.
The system
David, to you and me.
Yes, David. The system models look great as always. May well pick up the Warzone Charadon terrain set, but don't want to spend too much as I need to save my money for the all plastic Krieg they're going to announce. Fingers crossed. And then Jaws 10513 replies, have you seen the rumor engine with the roll of field wire, which is something we alluded to earlier, where I think it's just rattlings. So it's probably not plastic Krieg, I'm afraid.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that the delight and excitement that would be felt all around the internet by the release of a plastic range of Krieg would be strong. Certainly in one specific half of this podcast duo, but yeah, I feel like we're probably clutching at straws there, right, Phil? I mean, even you at your most optimistic wouldn't be supporting that.
Well, it's funny, like the initial time it came out, I sort of screenshotted it and sent it to Toke and was like, oh, could be engineers. I doubt it. Actually, my initial guess was that it would be the veterans because they have things like shotguns and access to demolition mines and bombs and stuff like that. So I figured it would be for that. But then on second thought, having seen the Rain and Rouse war gear, it looks very similar to that. So it's more likely an expansion on that.
Yeah, no, I would support that perspective. Yeah, but I mean, if it is Plastic Krieg, fantastic. I mean, I would, as I said already, would love it if a new range of Astra Militarum Guard type minis was due for release this year. That would be perfect.
Yeah, true.
But we will see. What's next, Phil?
So now we've got Shedim. So Shed.
Old Sheddon.
Shedim. I don't think we've had him before, have we?
We might have done. I don't know. I just wanted to make it sound as if we had. Who knows?
He says, guys, we've got so much 40k to show you. Seriously, we've got a lot. In fact, we have so much 40k to see that we've only managed to prepare a paltry 30-minute show with models you've already seen, plus one new model, a train kit with old Kill Team terrain, and a book no one cares about. I've had to edit that one for the younger viewers. And we also disabled the comment on our YouTube because of reasons. Fun fact, they always disable the YouTube comments, which is odd, but I think it's to probably stop posts like that are a bit negative.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, yeah, Games Workshop only really engages in heavily moderated comments on their Twitch streams. They don't dabble with Facebook, YouTube. Although they do have relatively, although again heavily moderated chats on their various Facebook feeds and things. But yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. I do accept that in the heat of that moment, there was a bit of an anticlimax around day 2 because the stream did feel like it concluded much sooner than we expected it would. And obviously all we saw was one very, very cool model, but essentially one model and a bunch of different variations of others. But I think as many of us can attest, the impact that Gaunt's Ghosts had the day after started to get us very hopeful. Seeing what has happened now on day 4 with the box games is exciting. And I think we're all going into tomorrow, Friday, really optimistic about what we're going to see. And I do think actually when we take the whole situation that is the whole of Warhammer Fest, that we're probably going to have a very different perspective than the one we had when things concluded on Tuesday. So credit where credit's due to all of our commenters and questions. A lot of these guys are basing their feedback on the situation as it stood, Wednesday morning when we put this post out there. So let's not judge that perspective too harshly, because I can understand where they're coming from. And obviously, if by Friday, Saturday, nothing of any great substance has occurred and they've scored a bit of an own goal, then fair enough. We're going to continue to, to preach that kind of narrative. But at this point, I remain optimistic. And I do think Gaunt's Ghost did a lot of good work to kind of make up for what we missed on Tuesday. But I do understand, because I, like everyone else, was underwhelmed by the Tuesday side of things. But I have the benefit of that perspective that a few extra days has made. So that's where I'm at the minute. I don't know. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think for me, the Gaunt's Ghost definitely made up for the sort of lack of new reveals on the Tuesday. Obviously, if you're not a Sisters player, like, you could be completely underwhelmed by the reveals on Tuesday. Should they have tried to show a bit of everything for every single army? Maybe that would sort of help cater for people. Maybe we'll see more on Friday, so maybe that'll balance it out. Someone else, though, that enjoyed Gaunt's Ghost was Tabletop Journeys. He said the sister models we saw yesterday, even if we'd seen the majority of them before, they were awesome. The winners, but so far, it's Wednesday night when they announced Gaunt's Ghost, announced on Black Library Day. Definitely keen to pick up the TANF first and only when they drop. And I think he's right. I think the TANF model sort of blew me away more than the I don't know, the High Lord of Terror Lady and my old chapter serf Nana. She was a cool model.
She was. I mean, there's the thing. There's been plenty of really great minis in that selection at this point, and I don't think, again, it comes back to the point I made at the start, which is we are very spoiled at the moment with the way GW does it, and in a lot of respects, they have been their own worst enemies in this scenario because of the fact that they have furnished us with so many great images and updates and consistently keeping us appraised of things that are happening. And also they're working in very difficult times because, the release schedule is absolutely, mucked up at the moment. And They're trying to work around what they can, the best they can. Again, they're a business, so they don't necessarily need people like me making apologies for them. But at the same point, it is fair to assert that, it hasn't been as easy as it otherwise might be for them. But regardless of that, yeah, I think, the miniatures are looking really great for what we've seen, and fingers crossed tomorrow is going to be super cool. We will see.
True. And I'll do the last one from Instagram. Maybe we'll have time to look at some of the Facebook ones as well. But we got Chris from the booth. I think he sort of sums it up relatively well. He says, "Hi there. So the first day for 40k did not feel too special to me. Maybe I've become a bit numb to seeing new models lately. Minis are revealed weekly, so this stream did not feel as extraordinary as I pictured a Warhammer Fest to be." So I assume he's a new-ish player, or at least to the concept of Warhammer Fest. "I do not want to yuck someone's yum here." Very interesting words. Yuck someone's yum. "So I'm happy for Sisters players, and I think I want to evaluate the events once the whole of the week is over," which I think is some solid advice. Because even for us, we're 90% in, but there's still 2 days to go. So who knows what we will see. I would say for today's date, which was the boxed games, it's like, I think a lot of people were a bit disappointed there was no Blood Bowl or Kill Team talk. Obviously there was no reference to Curse City, which I think a lot of people are still upset about, the lack of Curse City, or potentially lack of future releases for Curse City. So I can sort of see why people are, if you play one particular game and you weren't catered for, or you play one particular race, you kind of miss out. It's a bit like, a White Dwarf issue is for everyone, it can't just be tailor-made for you. So they do need to cover as much as possible. So it never feels as great as it could be, because what you want it to be isn't what anyone else wants it to be. That makes sense.
Yeah, and that is the problem though, isn't it? When they've got so many systems and so many things they're trying to support, and I can only really echo the sentiment there that we should only really judge it based on the complete event. But as I say, I mean, obviously our position here and what we're here to aspire to do is to offer our perspectives on what we've seen and give some context to that, and flesh out our own understanding of how this fits into the broader picture that is 40k. But regardless of that, yeah, I'm trying to be level-headed. I think next week, when we've seen the fullness of it, I'm either going to be ecstatic about it or frustrated about it based on what's to come. I think today and Friday and potentially Saturday are the days where they are going to kind of cash in and really kind of blow the doors off with regards to the 40k elements. And, that is something I still believe at this point. However, if I'm proven wrong, I will probably be relatively underwhelmed, but we'll see. I mean, that's the thing at this point. We will see, which makes for an interesting perspective in terms of us talking about it. But, regardless of the fact that it doesn't feel like that much, it definitely feels like there's been plenty of stuff for us to talk about on this occasion. So there must have been something, right?
Well, exactly.
Moving over to Facebook, is it, Phil?
Yeah, I've got a few here to read out. Well, in fact, there's loads, so we're not going to read them all out. Got old Axel. I won't pronounce your surname because I will butcher it completely. But he says the Charadon book will be fun to see what Be'lakor is going to do in 40k.
Be'lakor in 40k is going to muck stuff up, is my perspective on it. Or at least I really hope so. I mean, he's the size of an Imperial Knight. He is, ascending almost into a kind of godhood status within the realms of chaos. He is a monstrosity. And if he is not doing that justice, if he is not of an equivalent power level to, other demon primarchs and other models of that scale, then I think that's going to be incredibly disappointing. So yeah, I expect huge things for Be'lakor. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I think he's going to be incredibly good. What I'm more interested to see is potentially his armies of renown, that he gets to lead a kind of mixed chaos and marine force. I think that'd be really interesting, especially since a lot of people were saying these armies of renown were kind of fun and fluffy and they weren't really meant to be competitive. But it seems like a lot of people are saying the Terminus Est One's actually really good for Death Guard, even though you're not taking a lot of the perceived super competitive things that Death Guard normally have to take, which is either Mortarion or their vehicles. So it seems like it is actually really good. So it'd be interesting to see what the others are like. On a slightly side note, obviously we talked about not knowing what Terminus Est meant a few episodes ago. Good old Toke actually informed us it's Latin, and I believe it means the end, because obviously Terminus is like terminal, the end of something. Yeah, I thought I'd throw that one in there. Thanks, Toke, for letting us know.
Cheers, Toke. You always got our back.
Exactly. He was like, he only remembered the cool stuff from his Latin class, whereas I forgot everything.
Well, I wasn't posh enough to get a Latin class where I grew up, Phil. It speaks to our upbringings right there.
Oh, yes, the silver spoon in my mouth. Ooh.
No, exactly. Ooh, yum, 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 yum. More money, mama. Mama, give me more money. Anyway, next question, Phil, before we start insulting your heritage.
Yeah, do a couple more. So David Cole, he must be a brother of Joe, said the train box looks mighty tempting from over here. And yeah, as I said, I think it really depends on the price. But
it's price dependent.
I think it could be good.
Hugely price dependent. If it is north of £75, they are at a point where it's like, I can't really justify that for that.
Yeah,
but
if it was around 60, I think it's quids in.
Yeah, 60 quid sounds about right for what you got there. The thing is this being Games Workshop terrain, they're definitely gonna overvalue it, because you always seem to neglect to remember how expensive terrain is. It's one of those things, especially there are some more cost-effective reigns, but the Mechanicus stuff is crazy. So I'm just looking up now. So the Sector Mechanicus Ferrotonic Furnace, of which this set contains 2 of these, they are £30 each, right? So you've got
the big cylinders, right?
Yeah, so the big cylinders with the platform on the top, they are coming in at £30 each.
So
the pipes, as we've established. Oh, we never actually clarified whether you could get the pipes in the Sector Mechanicus Sacrosanct Forge Shrine, the Imperial Knight thing that I was talking about.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you find out?
I didn't bother looking, but now I can see it, and it looks like you've got a plasmary column and a pipe that goes down and another pipe that goes down, but it doesn't appear that you get all the pipes themselves. You just get... Well, you get a little bit of pipage, but it just goes down. So it's like you don't get the extendy bits. You just get like the plasma coil generator bit and whatever. I was surprised. I remember it even had that much of the thing in it, though. But there it is. Yeah, so you get some pipes. And what else do you get in there? You get the little plasma things, which are sold out at the moment, but they're 20 quid. So, okay, fine. So at this point, we're at 60, 80 quid for that. The little furnacey bits. Where are you? They're in a few different places. I can't see the furnacey bits specifically, but let's just put a 20 quid price point on them just for the sake of argument. Oh no, here they are. Oh, Phil, look, you're completely wrong, mate. Kill Team, Kill Zone, Sector Mechanicus, Environmental Expansion. That's got the pipes, mate.
But not the plasma pipes. Look closely.
Oh, are these not the plasma pipes? Is this going to be one of these situations where you and I are talking about plasma pipes and it's going to turn out that isn't even what's included in this thing?
Possibly.
It's going to be they've used the wrong stuff in the photos again. Anyway, irrespective of what it is, right? Like those furnaces and other bits and pieces, they've got them here in a Kill Team box for 60 quid with some pipes. So based on the idea that a Kill Team box with maybe the equivalent of pipes is 60 quid, the two bigger bits and the plasma things are 60 quid. So you're looking at 120 quid if you wanted to buy all this stuff through other means. Is Games Workshop going to give it to us for 60? I doubt it. Will they give it to us for 75? I now doubt it. Will anyone fall over themselves to buy it if it's like 90 quid? I doubt it, but we'll see, right?
Yeah, I think 90 is far too much. That will be
Yeah.
a hard pass. But you know, if it's a bit cheaper, then it might be worth getting, because those cool kind of cylindrical sort of towers with the platform on top is really cool. And as you said, they're pretty expensive on their own. So give us a bargain, GW. Go on. You know you want to.
It has been a while since they've given us a terrain-based bargain. So, yeah, I
That's
live in hope, but I'm not too optimistic. Do you know what size board, by the way, that is that they've put this on in the
I
image?
presume it's what was it, a third of the standard size table, because one of those boards is the smallest gaming size, right?
Yeah, I would assume it's half. So I'd assume it's like 44 by 30 or something.
Yes. No, it won't be half. It'll be a third. So
Why a third?
because it's only need 3 of them to build 44
I
by
don't know.
16.
I've never interacted with these cardboard things they do. But anyway, the point is when you consider that this might occupy only a third of a 60 by 44 board, and you look at this as a promotional shot, and it looks really sparse on that kind of tells you everything you need to know in terms of whether this is going to really give you what you need. But we'll see, won't we?
That's true. No, let's swiftly move on. So we've got a couple more to read out. We've got Sean
Couple more?
Davies. Yeah, he says they look amazing, but I do hope the new close combat units don't spell the end for units like Repentia and Mortifier Penitent engines, as these are all amazing units. But I do wonder if it is a signal that the 2 parts of the sister units could be splitting into Sisters and Ministorum into separate forces, which is interesting. Like, a lot of armies do have effectively 2 factions to them. You got Adeptus Mechanicus, you got Mechanicum and Scutari. You've got Guard with kind of regular regimental guard and scions. Sisters have always had a bit of a kind of actual sisters and then actual ministorum, which is where we talked about, you know, you got the Crusaders and those more esoteric Inquisition style stuff. Orcs are potentially going to have regular orcs and beast snaggers, maybe. Who knows how that's going to work. Yeah, it's interesting that they do that sort of thing. Like even Gene Stealer Cult, they've got Gene Stealer Cult, to a lesser extent Tyranids, but it's more they've got the guards, Brood Brothers. Yeah, so it's interesting that they do that, but they keep them as one codex. But they have these 2. I like the idea that you have one army, but there's many different ways of playing it. So it might be they're just fleshing that sort of side of it out.
Yeah, when I read this question originally and responded to it on Facebook, I presumed that he was talking about them taking those elements out of the book and establishing it as its own codex, which I don't think they're going to do. I think you're still going to have the Ministorum's elements within the Sisters book, or rather the Adeptus Sororitas book. But I do think that, you know, over time, as they continue to expand those ranges, there could be an argument that they can separate them over time. To your point as well, I mean, we have seen mergers of those kind of things over the years. We're starting to see Sisters of Silence merge in with Custodes. Obviously, you've got Primaris Marines, regular Marines, Demonkin type things, and Chaos. There's loads of examples that expand on that point. But yeah, I can't see them taking the Ministorum aspects out of the Adeptus Sororitas book at this time. In response to the opening part of that question about Repentia and the other kind of combat units, it really depends. But I think based on the war gear, we can safely assume that these boogie board sisters are going to occupy that durable combat space. And that is going to mean that they're going to be, potentially outperforming the very fragile Repentia. I can't imagine that Games Workshop are going to keep Repentia the way they have been when they do this book. I imagine Repentia are going to get relatively nerfed, not to the point that they're completely unusable, but to the point that they're not what they are today. And I think these guys are going to come in with that added durability, but potentially a little less potency in terms of their combat potential. But with the way the game is shaping up, you're going to go for that. And then when you look at the mecha style sisters, the engine ones, I mean, those guys, again, with no understanding what their rules are likely to be, I can safely assert, based on those miniatures, that they are going to be ridiculous. If they are vehicle squadrons that have multi-melters, heavy bolters, missile launchers, and close combat weapons, I just think they're going to be monstrous. I think you are going to struggle to kill them. I think you are going to struggle to stop them. And because they have such obviously strong combat potential, you're not even going to be able to bog them down like other vehicles. It strikes me that they are going to be a massively powerful unit. The only thing that potentially restricting them is the way that, as they will almost certainly be vehicles, like war walkers or dreadnoughts or what have you, the way they interact with terrain is going to be interesting. But that's going to be the only saving grace. I think they're going to wreck people. I don't know. I mean, what do you reckon, Phil?
Yeah, I think when the Paragon Warsuits first came out, they were a thing I did the comparison to, but they've got penitent engines, which are close combat walkers. Why do they need a second close combat walker that's so different? And he's pointing out the fact that there's a difference between the Sisters and the Ministorum. So that's at least an interesting take, that's why you've got this discrepancy. One is a bit more of a brute monster, and then the other one is this like elite guard. And it's like they can have crossovers in terms of occupying similar spaces in terms of close combat potential. But as you point out, one of them's got some really cool shooting capability. Penitent engines don't, but the mortifiers do. And they're sort of like an either or, whereas maybe the Paragon Warsuit's a bit more of an in between those two. So it's got shooting and close combat potential. Maybe it's in terms of its like, obviously, I mean, I don't know what a penitent engine slot is. I'm assuming it's a heavy slot, whereas these might be more elite. So because they occupy different slots, different point costs, you might make that trade-off as when you take one over the other for your particular army or play style. I do really think that in the armies of renown, we get maybe a warsuit only type of army, being led by the High Lord, because obviously she appears in the book. So maybe we get a specific Sisters build around them with extra rules bolted on, which would be really interesting. So it gives it its own space to play in without, overwriting these other units. But as you said, I think, Repentia are going to get toned down because they're just crazy good at the moment. And the Celestin Prime, was it? I can never remember now. The ones with the shields obviously are, as you say, a bit more of a durable.
Oh, the boogie boards.
Yeah, boogie board versions. It's going to be a bit more durable.
Yeah, because they're going to have the 3-up armor saves. If these things are storm shields, then all of a sudden they're going to 2-up armor saves with 4-up invuln. If they're storm shields, I doubt they will be storm shields. They will look more like their combat shields. Whether that transfer,
go on, carry on.
Whether that transfers a 4-up invuln, who knows? Or even if it's a 5-up invuln, it's still added durability. You stick these guys in cover; they're going to be hard to get rid of, and they're going to probably have some decent damage. Like I say, the mecha sisters, the combat ones with the covered in guns. I mean, they look to me like an attack bike with a relic blade or something. I mean, it's like it's got the multi-mounter like an attack bike. It probably won't have quite the same mobility, but I'm going to assume they're going to be fast. I don't think they're going to be movement 6. I would assume they're going to be somewhere between 8 and 10. And yeah, I assume they're going to hit like a truck. So it's that thing. Attack bikes have already proven themselves as being really good in Space Marine armies. An attack bike that can kick the crud out of you in combat, I mean, that is, it's going to be, and it depends how many points they put on it. Because to me, each one of these things looks like it should be borderline 100 points. But Games Workshop being Games Workshop, it wouldn't surprise me if it netted out at like 65, 70 points a model. Yeah,
because you got to have squads of 3. Are they?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be more than a Sentinel, but less than like a Redemptor Dread in terms of price and power. Is somewhere occupying the space.
But in a way, they become more than they become more than the sum of their parts in that sense. Because that's always the thing that's crazy about this stuff is like, just because of the numbers. As soon as you got 3 multi-melters on the table, it amplifies things. And I don't know. I'm terrified for how good they're going to be because I can just already
Well,
envision it. It's like,
yes, it feels like if you're gonna have to buy a model for your sisters, it's going to be these guys. So the rules are going to be crazy good, and I think every army has at least one somewhat broken unit that is a top seller, like Eradicators, for example. I think every army's got one of them. This is probably going to be it for sisters for this new codex, where it's just really good.
I agree.
Yeah, I was thinking about in terms of units replacing them. Obviously, I talked about Crusaders, which feel like they occupy a similar space to the ladies with the shields. So I think if Crusaders still are going to exist in the new codex, I think those rules need to be completely redone to, one, be good, but two, maybe to be more like a bodyguard choice, like the Vitrix Honor Guard, where they can tank wounds on behalf of someone else. I can't remember if they did that before, but if they did, they just need to do it better.
I was just looking at the photos of these Paragon war suits, and it's that bit where you realize that, oh yeah, you can put heavy bolters on their shoulders, and then you can give them a heavy flamer, and it's like, or maybe these are storm bolters rather than like heavy bolters, but whatever it is.
So, yeah.
Whatever the case, like the fact you can give these guys heavy flamers, a whacking great sword, and some range weapons, because the heavy flamers is going to do some legit work as well. I'm just terrified of them. I think they're going to, I think they're going to be terrifying. I'm genuinely concerned for what these are going to represent on the tabletop. If Games Workshop underpriced these ever so slightly, I think they're going to be insane. But we'll see, right? We'll see. Phil, mate, we've hit that 40-minute mark. I reckon that'll do.
We got one last one. It's a good one. It's a good one. It's from old Peter Cartwright. He says, it's a very nice one. He says, I just bought my daughter her first box of sisters. She's 5. Isn't that sweet? And I'm pumped to eventually get her home of these new sisters. Get her some of these new sisters. Also saw the shirt pictures. One he asks for is in a crow's manner. He says is definitely needed, which I think was something I said last week in terms of how the crow flies. I said in a crow's manner.
Oh, is that what that was a reference to? Because when I responded to him on Facebook, I had no frame of it. I was like, what is he talking about?
So yeah, if you didn't watch, I did a little Instagram post with some random t-shirt ideas based on mostly quotes from the show. If people really want them, I'm sure we can manufacture some somehow. But it was more a bit of a joke.
You can add them to the Beyond the Tabletop store, right?
I'm sure I could, or something. I don't know.
I have a friend who actually does t-shirt stuff. I could probably sort it out in no time if we really want to do it.
But yeah, I'm sure we could.
All right, I'll have a word with him. We'll figure it out. We'll get it done for episode
100.
I won't have it. Well, not 100, but we'll get it done.
200.
We'll sort it out. Yeah. We'll deal with it. I mean, obviously, it's awesome that he's getting to share his hobby with his daughter. I mean, it's amazing that a 5-year-old would be, demonstrating the patience and the kind of enthusiasm to. I mean, not necessarily to paint in the general sense, but I suppose it's always one of those things because it's such a fiddly hobby. I can only imagine like a 5-year-old like destroying anything that they come in contact with when it's 40k. But obviously. This 5-year-old obviously demonstrates some very sensible approaches.
I mean, maybe he's painting it up for her potentially, or just whacking up contrast paint because that might be quite a useful way of doing it.
I love the idea of people getting to share their hobbies with their kids. I think it's beautiful. Really, I think it's one of the greater elements of this game, right? I mean, I think all parents want to kind of get their kids into stuff that they're into and share those little moments with them, and I think it's really cool. But yeah, I mean, obviously this new sister stuff's going to be amazing, and I'm eager to figure out when this guy starts losing to his daughter at 40k. That's where it is. I think I said in the Facebook comment, there's a statement that always goes around in my friend groups where people talk about when their kids start beating them at video games, most notably Mario Kart seems to be the most consistent contender. Oh, I finally lost to my son at Mario Kart, so on and so forth. It'd be awesome to hear about the day that he finally loses a game of 40k to his daughter. Or maybe that is already happening. Maybe he's just not able to. Maybe she's a tactical genius. Who could say? But no, that's awesome. And obviously on the t-shirt front, yeah. Well, I'll talk to her. I'll talk to my buddy, and we'll see if I can get some options made. You just got to keep those designs coming, Phil, and we'll get it sorted out.
I'll churn them out in my lunch break.
Yeah. Come on now, you can do it. You can make it happen. Awesome. Okay. Well, that was a pretty solid series of questions right there. Thank you very much to everyone who did that. If you would like the opportunity to do the same, we'll be putting out a poll or a general questionarium next week around Tuesday or maybe Wednesday, dealing with the topics that we're going to discuss, which might well be what happens over the next 2 days with the 40k unveils that occur at Warhammer Fest. But whatever the case, yeah, please check out our social media and get involved. We do our best to respond to everybody. I've been a little bit lax on the YouTube side of thing lately, so I will pick that up again pretty soon. So if you've left me a comment, or rather left us a comment on YouTube and I haven't responded to it yet, I apologize. I'll get around to it. Sorry about that. But yeah, beyond that, thank you very much, everyone. Phil, any final thoughts your side before we say goodbye?
Ooh. Well, I'm just looking forward to the next 2 days, what it has to offer. And yeah, exciting times for 40k.
Ooh, not long, Phil, before we'll be playing games together again, right?
Oh, I know. Yeah, hopefully I'll have a bit more added to my Minotaurs by the time that happens.
I can't wait, mate. I can't wait. It's going to be great. I mean, what's the timeline, you reckon? 4 or 5 weeks or so?
For these 30 guys, I reckon another month and I'll have them finished. I'm mostly there. I've done all the armor. I mean
more about when you're going to be able, because haven't they? When do they shift the rules? It's like next week they shift it that people can get together in households from multiple locations and stuff, right?
Oh, I don't know actually. I've not been following it.
I think that is the shift. I think we will be allowed to start coming together in each other's homes, but obviously I appreciate more vaccine-related fun that needs to transpire before that occurs. But anyway, long story short, won't be long, can't wait. But until then, goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.